We're back in public session, and if first order of business, if everyone could stand and join us for the pledge of allegiance, we'll get that out of the way. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. And now we will read the remote script for a remotely conducted meeting. As a preliminary matter, I am Krista Silva, the Chair of the Maynard Select Board. And permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Everybody is in the room, so I know they can hear me. And there is nobody on the call that is anticipating to speak at this moment. So good afternoon, evening. This open meeting of the Maynard Select Board is being conducted via Zoom and live. And some speakers on the agenda will be participating remotely, and the chair may allow for the public to provide comment as well. The Select Board would like to hear public comments, and if there's further action that is required by the board, the chair or the meeting manager will add the matter as appropriate to a forthcoming agenda. Depending on the comment, the board may, if we are able within the confines of the open meeting law, respond with information as opposed to needing to deliberate on the matter. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, this meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast to individual attendees, unless otherwise required by law. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you, so please take care not to screen share your computer, as anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All of the meeting documents for this meeting are on board docs, except for any executive session meetings and materials. So follow along, please, on board docs, unless we note otherwise. So we will now turn to the first item on the agenda. But before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda, and after they have concluded their remarks, we will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Also, please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If members of the board wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And for items of public comments, after the members have spoken, the chair will afford public comments as follows, or may afford public comments as follows. We first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify themselves by their name and address. And once we have a list of all public commentators, we will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes per comment. Public comment for public hearings will only be accepted in person per the open meeting law. And with that, we will move on to the first item on our agenda after that, and that is public comments. Do we have any public comments in the room? Having none in the room. Do we have any public comments online this evening? Seeing nobody raising their hands, we will move to the next item, which is our consent agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion about the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent agenda items A and B as presented, contingent upon adherence to all federal, state, and local public health and safety guidance, and authorize the use of digital signatures if approved.
Okay. So there's 2 items for the consent agenda this evening. Both use of town property. Does anybody have any comments or questions about the 2 items on the consent agenda this evening?
It does look like Mr. Kearney is on. Okay. So the name is Joe baseball softball.
That's it. Okay. Does anybody have Mr. Kearney this evening?
I do have one question. It's more of a general question. In terms of the people who use the fields, Is there much of a sense of how many of them are more recreation type leagues that might serve a wider population as opposed to like highly competitive leagues, which tend to be more select and I'm thinking within the context of sort of accessibility of our facility to a wider range of people at bottom.
Yeah, this is a recreational league. It's for boys who usually don't play club ball, which is more highly competitive. A lot of these boys do play for the middle school teams, but it is a recreational league, and anybody who signs up can play.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions regarding either the maple sugar or the baseball?
We need to inform the golf course that. After the other happening.
Yeah, they know.
They do.
Yeah, they're aware of him. He's not, he kind of doesn't really get onto the. He's kind of on the side, but they're well aware of George. All right, so all in favor of the consent agenda, raise your hand. Let's go forward. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is a proclamation for John DeMars retirement, Greg.
John DeMars retired.
He's retired, so that's great, great,
I'm gonna look back 34 years.
Okay.
No, almost 35, which is impressive. So there's a proclamation. I think this Thursday we'll get together, but either way, I think it's well deserved. I think sort of recognition that the board would like to bestow upon it, and so we have a little thing right up.
All right, would anybody like to make a motion?
Move to approve a proclamation honoring John DeMars for his 34 years of service to the people of Maynard as presented, authorizing use of digital signatures if approved.
Second.
Any further comment on the proclamation? All those in favor? All right. Okay, next up is another use of town property. And someone like to make that motion?
I'll move to approve the use of Memorial Park, Naylor Court, and Nason Street sidewalks by the Cultural Council Cultural District for the Maynard Pride Festival on Sunday, June 9th, 2024, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., contingent upon adherence to all federal, state, and local public health and safety guidelines. And the motion authorizing the use of digital signatures approved.
Second.
Well, you know what this one is?
What is it?
Mm.
It's well, I think we have Lisa done on you want to ask her property.
I am here and I do have a comment to make, and forgive me for this. I had assumed that the timing would be an hour before, but one of the bands is requesting to load in at 10 a.m. Now I can tell them they need to set up within an hour, or can I amend the request to be from 10 to 5?
I will accept the friendly amendment to the motion. Just has to be approved by the seconder.
Second. I second the amendment.
You approved the
I
amendment,
approve the amendment.
Okay.
Second approval.
so then we just vote again.
So we haven't voted yet. So as far as the people who are going in, so it looks like, Lisa, it looks like, I think we have you figured out whether or not you're gonna need to close roads? Or?
I do have a request to close Nason Street for a few reasons. One is that we want to get vendors in the area, and the park itself is limited in size and uneven, so we wanted to put them in the street. And the second reason is that some of the vendors, the bands especially, were looking for specific parking spaces for themselves, asking if we can reserve. And I just thought killing two birds with one stone, if we blocked off Nason Street and allowed them access so they could load and unload. And so the public could avail themselves of vendors that would be, obviously, I've been told that we have to have them off the sidewalk for ADA compliance, so they would need to be in parking spaces on the street. So those are my reasons for wanting to close off Nason Street down to Main.
Has there been any conversation with the businesses on Nason Street about closing the street down for these hours?
Not yet, because I kind of thought it was a select board decision as opposed to the other way around, but
Oh.
tell them afterwards.
You're 100% correct that it is a select board decision, but it's also a kind of a courtesy to the businesses to see if there's any strenuous objections or any concerns that any of the people that are there have.
I mean, I can
It's not-
certainly, we certainly intend to speak to them because we'd like them, the businesses, to put pride flags on their businesses and, you know, become sort of part of the event. And we can certainly bring that up at the time. As far as parking goes, I feel as though there's the accessible parking lot that runs behind the outdoor store and into CVS, and then there's the basin parking lot. Those are both accessible by Main and by Summer. So there's, you know, still available parking near businesses for them to be able to continue business as usual. I don't think it would be that disruptive to them.
Well, aren't you gonna be using Nason though? I mean, the basin? that what you're-
We're requesting part of it. We're not saying close off the entire basin. We're only requesting the space from where the mural is up to, say, the electric plug-in cars. The rest of the lot would be open, and so would the lot that would be in the middle, in front of Babaco's and in front of we're not asking to close off the entire basin. We put barriers up just around the space where we want to bring the food truck in, and potentially Amory's Tomb is gonna have a beer tent there, but we don't know. He's figuring out whether he wants to be down there with the food truck or up in the park itself. But you know, we just want the space to bring a food truck into.
I very much support this. I'm excited about the new festival for downtown. I am though concerned about closing off Mason Street on a Sunday that might cause some issues. I'm wondering if a better alternative might be between Glendale and Mason, that stretch, sort of what they did recently for the ice sculpture thing, although I know that there was some pushback even on that. And I think they did the entirety of Summer Street for that stretch, if I'm not mistaken, not just between Glendale.
They did do the entirety of Summer Street, and I remember being snarled in there because you couldn't see that it was closed when you were at the lights, and by that time you were in the wrong lane. So that was
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if the better alternative might be between Glendale and Mason, but you know, I guess we have time to figure that out.
My pause on that is that's a very small amount of space. And I always feel that Summer is like a direct route going to Stowe. And I would feel that that's something that I would think the town would be less likely to want to block off, just because it's a throughway for traffic. I think that might be more problematic.
Mm.
I'm more concerned about
problematic the
businesses.
day of the ice festival.
I think the concern that we have is more for the number of times in a year or a season or a month that we close Nason Street and handicap some of our you know, long-standing businesses. That's the concern, is that those folks are made aware and they're buying into the closing of their storefronts, basically.
I can talk to them, and again, I will talk to them. I get their buy-in. Because there is accessible parking, I don't think their business is handicapped in that regard.
It's not about the parking, it's about the perceived access to their buildings from them when the street is closed. When the street is closed and there's people in the street, the owners of those businesses in the past have consistently been concerned that that affects their number of customers on any given day, and that's the concern, not parking.
Lisa, have you talked to the Economic Development Committee or the Maynard Business Alliance who certainly have some participation on the EDC about the.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you say that again?
Yeah, have you talked to the Economic Development Committee or the Maynard Business Alliance about this proposal?
Linda Thayer and I she's on my cultural district committee. And
Very
yes,
good.
we do disagree about where to close the street. She was talking about the entirety of Summer Street again. And I kind of thought that was a worse idea because it would block a parking lot access. So, I mean, there is a debate on that. I can certainly speak to the business owners down on Nason Street about it. Because I think if I give them the opportunity to be part of it and to draw in an LGBTQ consumer base, they might actually be fine with it. It is a different consumer base than they might be used to. And we intend to market this event to other towns to get their communities to come here as well.
Yes. I don't, so we're talking about, here closing Nason Street and the sidewalks. We want to adjust that? Do we want to have a conversation about that, or we want to?
I mean, my proposal would be that, if Lisa is gonna have conversations with, the businesses and come back, because it's February, so I've got a little bit of time.
And thank you for getting the application in February.
Yeah, absolutely, so we can do that,
Yeah.
so we can understand.
I wanted to get it in early because honestly, this is a very big deal. We've already put an announcement out to the community and the feedback has been incredible.
Right.
The town really wants this.
No, the event itself, I don't think there's any issue with at all. It's really just that request for the closing of that particular stretch of road. So I think the event is, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I suspect everybody is favorable for the event itself. So that's not going to be in jeopardy. The only issue is do we want to authorize closing down the entirety of Nason Street from Summer Street down to Main and affect those businesses that are along that stretch?
Is there a protocol in place for that? I mean, it would seem to me that there should be almost like an automatic process that in the event of a street closure for whatever event, that there is a protocol. Okay, we will, I mean, at the very least, people are notified well in advance and given some opportunity for whatever reason to express whatever concerns they might have.
Almost like an abutters notice, like, do we let people know if we're going to close, if
Right, I
the
mean,
proposals out there?
yeah, I mean, the final decision obviously rests with the board, but it's really just a matter of courtesy, because as David has been saying, I think, some of these businesses, they're concerned about how it might affect them. I mean, I would hope that an event like this would be a positive benefit for them, but to at least show them the courtesy that we respect their their position in this, I think is important, especially given that we have time.
So we asked, I think.
And my suspicion is that Linda's concern is based upon her involvement with the Business Alliance. So she has that insight and she's been involved in a number of these events. So my guess is that she's reflecting the sensitivity somewhat that we are towards the issue as to why she was suggesting, because the impact on Summer Street to businesses is limited really to one. And maybe at that point in time, it might be two because the ice cream place is open. Whereas with Nason, it's a whole stretch. So that's my sense, is that Linda's sensitive to that.
Yeah, as far as-
I will tell you, and again, I hear you and I understand. In terms of the one business fine arts that you think, is lesser affected. I just will let you know that they are agreeing to do a mini LGBTQ film festival for us
That's wonderful.
on Saturday.
And that's-
So I'd
Yeah,
like to
so-
keep them happy as well. So it's, double-edged sword. They're making a concession to us and giving up some of their theater space for it without
Yeah.
charging us. That was kind of another reason why I was a little hesitant to close in front of them.
Well, and so it's gonna be during that time, because I believe they might be, I don't know what time they run movies on Sundays anyway.
I don't either. I can find out. We were going to give them the opportunity to have Theater Creamery open so that people would patronize it to get ice cream while they were
Which
up.
they would still be able to do regardless of the street closure or not.
Then, and again, then I would make the same suggestion that the businesses on Nason Street are then accessible as well. I do have one ask, and maybe this is possible and maybe it's not, and I'm trying to look at a Google map here. There is a small one-way street, and I don't know if it's possible to do it. If we were to close off just part of Nason Street down to the one-way street on Magnolia, and maybe could that temporarily be like an inlet, a two-way, like an inlet back into Summer Street, coming in from that parking lot that runs behind Magnolia? Because there's a one-way street there that's normally one way going away from Nason Street. But could you do a detour to direct it so that the rest of Nason Street is accessible?
Yeah.
And only
I
the top of
suspect
it would be
that-
blocked out.
Yeah, I suspect that, I know the road you mean, I suspect that as you go up that road and then take a left or right, the visibility is not great. So I imagine that if that road becomes, higher density traffic, that might be a problem, but I would defer to the, traffic experts on.
Right, yeah, that seems complicated, but I can understand, I appreciate your creativity, but I would defer to the police chief on that as well.
Yeah, I think we do err most times on, with caution regarding the businesses. We have made decisions in the past that have unintentionally affected businesses, so we have learned from that. And that's why one of the first things we ask, when someone comes to us with an ask like this is, have you talked to them? Because the last thing we want is to make a decision and, a unilateral decision that affects them in a way that they weren't prepared for. So that is the reason why I think that we're all, we absolutely support it. We just want to, again, if you look at Summer versus Nason, the theater and the Theater Creamery are there. People could park at the library and it would be that one business. But if you look at Nason, there's about 10 or 12 businesses there. So, again, yes, they could park in those other parking lots and that's great, but
Also,
I'm concerned that it's a bigger ask for them.
you also affect access to, that end of Main Street, just for, down Mason, take a left on Main. There's an effect on that as well. Well, so, anyway,
I guess my question is, if you tried to close off where Glendale meets Summer Street and coming in that way and you blocked that off, if somebody makes a mistake, like how far back are you telling people that part of Summer Street is blocked? Because if they're already at the intersection in that set of lights and they start moving forward, where else are they going to get away from that particular? Are they going through the parking lot and popping back out on Main? I think that's almost a harder redirect. And you're
Yes,
right, we only really want a bit of the sidewalk around the park. Either way, on Summer or Nason, I don't really need the whole street. I mean, 3 years from now, if I can turn it into a block party, that'd be awesome, but I'm
And I
just
think
trying to
that's-
get a little space around it without interfering with the traffic flow.
Yeah, that's part of where I am. I think when I think about the volume of people we have at, say, the tree lighting, which is, crammed into a half an hour event. And we do that without closing down the streets. And this event is hopefully draws the same crowd that's distributed over the period of 6 hours. So I am questioning if we do need to shut down the streets at all, if we can bring some of those vendors up onto the park itself. And if we do get a fairly sized crowd, which I hope we do, and we feel in future years a street closure is needed, then absolutely open to that. So I would love to see that success rate. So yeah, I think we're excited. We're excited about the event. We think it's looking great. We just need to work out some of the details on what the DPW fire have listed here. The question I have on the health, which is probably more for the town administrator, is that I'm assuming it wouldn't be the cultural district that would need to contact municipal services, but rather the food truck would have to apply for a food permit. So I'm
Yeah, that's
assuming,
correct.
I just want to make sure that
Yep.
that we're not having them need to be an intermediary in that process.
No.
So, okay.
And the food trucks, they typically, they understand that process.
I would, yeah, I think so. Hope so.
Yeah,
I have not been told yet what the food truck needs to do in terms of applying to the town or what kind of insurance they have to have. So if somebody can provide that information, that would be lovely and wonderful.
all you have to do is tell them to contact us. Like, you just tell the food truck, whoever, I don't know, whoever you're reaching, and they won't be surprised by this. In fact, like,
Okay,
they should know ahead of time to contact the Board of Health and Municipal Services. All you do is remind them of their obligation to do that. They shouldn't operate without us.
so are we saying we're considering if we're gonna close the street, or are we saying absolutely no to any part of the street?
My thought would be at this point, street closure should be sort of put aside. And we'll have a discussion as we learn more about the size of this, I've envisioned the event to be somewhat like eventually. Maynard Fest in a smaller sense, because not the entire triangle, but. No, that's, and I don't know what you have planned, but that was sort of the way I envisioned it. When I heard about it. Obviously, we closed down the streets for that, but that's known to have, hundreds of people downtown at any given time. And this is the first go round, so we don't know what we're gonna get.
That's true. And that's why, my concern was just trying to get a little bit more space around the park, because the park to fit vendor booths in would be limited and uneven. And normally people that are vending, their jewelry or their t-shirts or their wares, they want, a flat
Well, they do
surface
use
to
Memorial
put
Park.
their stuff on.
They do use Memorial Park for vendors on Maynard Fest every year. And they don't seem to be affected by that.
I think there's usually about 5 of them, and I'm looking to put more like 15 in that space.
So the map that came with our packet.
It was a horrible map that I made that was just basically to
No,
give you. an
that's
idea.
okay.
I'm not a map maker, and I just
That-
couldn't
That's
figure out
okay,
what
but
to do.
if most of the activity is gonna be in the park. It would make more sense to close Summer Street and line Summer Street with green vendor tents. You could have both sides of the street. That you could use. I mean, you'd much better off on Summer Street than Mason Street.
Okay,
I mean, at least in my opinion, based on what you just said, you like to, the goal is to get some more vendors. If you're gonna have vendors, you're gonna have people that are gonna have to leave the area and leave the park to go down Mason to get, to go to your vendors. Whereas if you're on Summer Street, you can use both sides of the street, I would think, and you're gonna be much more centralized.
I mean, if you're comfortable with it, my concern was just closing off traffic in that area, especially because it's a throughway to Stowe, but if you're cool with it. That's fine with me.
Yeah, I don't know what the
Yes,
numbers
yes.
are, but I mean, I see whenever I'm coming up to that light on Nason Street,
Close.
I see about as many cars going down Nason Street as I do going up Summer Street. So I suspect both get busy.
So if we just closed from Glendale to Nason, would that give you the space you're looking for?
Yeah, I think so.
I would, yeah,
The problem is the one-way traffic.
You're better off
One-way
to close the
traffic.
whole street.
Yeah.
shouldn't let's have the applicant go back and work with
Yeah,
that, with the
yeah.
DPW and the police before coming. I think
Okay.
if you were, Lisa, to come back with the design and said, here's what I want to do with no street closures, I'm pretty sure we would be pretty
100%.
quick to pass it. And if you wanted to come back with an alternate design saying, I worked with the DPW director and the police chief, and we've
And the
agreed
business.
on this one, and the business, and we agreed on this one, then I think at the higher bar, there's a little bit more work for you to do, but if you go through that work and show the need for that, I think we would pass that too. So I think you're got a pretty clear green light path forward for no street closures on this plan. I think we're really excited about the event.
Yeah,
And if you want a street closure, we just want to make sure that the homework is done with the businesses, the DPW director, the chief of police, to make sure that we have a full understanding of the implications of what those street closures would look like.
okay,
Great.
great. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Are you, so you're holding the vote for the whole thing?
What's
pending this?
that?
Yeah.
Or do we have the park? Are you holding the whole vote?
Well, we'll hold the whole, unless, I think we would vote on no street closures right now if you wanted us to. I don't know.
Yeah.
Look to the rest of my
Um,
board if you want, so.
We can ask the administration to hold Sunday, June 9th in advance so that nobody else puts in for it.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be
Yeah.
cool.
So
Yeah,
that the date is
absolutely.
blocked off, so you're not gonna have a problem with
Yeah.
somebody else grabbing that date. So that date will be, as long as the administration is okay, that date will be blocked off, we're good. It's just we haven't finalized it with street closure issues yet.
Okay,
I mean, so if we were to change this, if we were to change this to move to approve the use of Memorial Park, Naylor Court, and other town properties to be named.
Yeah.
The-
Move to approve
I mean,
use of
I just,
Memorial Park,
because
Naylor-
my only concern, so the concern is, I guess, the concern, listening to your questions is, is it gonna be better for your event, better for your planning, better for your advertising, for us to agree to everything but the street piece now? Does that make that easier for you to accomplish those goals if we were to approve this absent the closure of any streets? We can do it without the streets, and then if you wanna close streets, come back, and that's a whole separate application of sorts.
I suppose it makes sense because I don't know yet how many vendors I can line up.
All right, so I will then amend the motion again. This
Sorry.
time to read, I will move to approve the use of Memorial Park by the Cultural Council, Cultural District
How
for
about Naylor
for the
Court?
Maynard,
The
Give a Naylor
the
Court.
map section in Naylor Court,
Yeah.
what's that?
the sections of Naylor Court as designated on the map.
So moved.
So move to approve, let's just move to approve the use of Memorial Park, Naylor Court,
As
and the-
designated.
and the areas as designated in the provided map by the Cultural Council, Cultural District for the Maynard Pride Festival on Sunday, June 9th, 2024, from 11 AM to 5 PM. 10 AM, sorry, 10 AM to 5 PM. Contingent upon adherence to all federal, state, and local public health and safety guidelines, and authorizing the use of digital signatures if approved.
Second, again.
All right, so
Okay, everything but the streets and 10 AM.
everything with the streets and 10 AM, and if when you guys have those conversations and those conversations are completed, we come back and we'll get together and we'll either amend this motion as made, or we'll create a new motion and do the street closures that everybody believes are necessary. All those in favor? All right, so you're good to go.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything. We'll just be in contact about the rest of the things we left out tonight.
Okay,
All right, thank you, Lisa.
thank you.
Lisa.
Good luck. All right, Department of Public Works, I guess that's why everyone's left. All right. Make it brief, Justin. We all have homes and families.
Buddy, what do we have first on board?
Winston
Well,
Building,
Winston
change order
Builders.
for-
All right, Winston, it's like associated. Winston is phase 2 of well 4A's construction project. We are well underway. I would say roughly about 75 to 80% completion, and we have a change order that, it's multiple mini change orders that equate to $76,275. Again, Winston, just to be reminded, is the contractor that's performing most of the modifications currently. So adapting to our current facility, may
have significant change orders within that contract. Again, we anticipate a lot of work, we design a lot of work, but until it's actually operating, we have to change certain things on the fly, so operating on operations. So just in front of you, you have a change order in the amount of $76,275 for your approval.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve change order for PCO 014, PCO 016, PCO 017, PCO 018, PCO 020, PCO 023 with Winston Builders Corporation for the Well 4A water treatment plant upgrade, phase 1 construction contract number 1376 in the amount of $76,275 as presented, and authorized use of digital signatures if approved.
Second,
Does anybody have any questions regarding Winston Builders change order?
Not so much specifically on this one, but in general, I think with the MWRA discussions, I see all these small things come along, and I think it's been a while since we had kind of an overall where we are in 4A and how it fits with the other conversations and with the other conversations. When's the next time we'll have a good chance to discuss overall update on water planning and where we are?
I'll go most likely the rate hearing. And let's just be aware, MWA for the most part, Mike hasn't gone anything because there's no movement.
So, but I ask it because we've mentioned it on the side and all, it's a lot of conversation critical for a long-term project, and it doesn't fit neatly within the rate hearing. So are we gonna talk more?
No, I
about
think rate hearing is I think that is a good time because it's alternate water and sewer. That's my expectations.
Okay.
Can't help yourself to get into sort of like long range planning and talk about.
We've got a less efficient board could help themselves out of that, so, but okay, when's the next rate hearing?
So we're tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, March 6th.
All right, so can we make sure that on that agenda item for the rate hearing, that we include what Jeff just asked for?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
long range
yeah.
water plan.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to add it, in case we don't forget.
One other question before we vote. I just want to clarify, the original award contract value was 4.1 million. The total contract value is now 4.3 million. What's the allocated amount?
For this entire project?
Yeah.
So in both contracts associated in Winston, the overall bond capacity is over $10 million. We're roughly at $8 million as we speak.
Okay, that's what the question I wanted to ask.
Yeah, we'll be below the 10 million, that's our anticipation. We did, if you remember on the last conversation with Associated, they have substantial completion, which means they're pretty much almost completed. As a whole, Winston is actually creeping towards substantial completion. We were awaiting DEP's approval of some of our processes to be turned on and pumped into our distribution system. Apparently that literally happened the day after I told you last select board meeting. So as part of that process, we're able to activate all the mechanisms, and now it's fine tuning. And while you go through that process, a lot of this is automated self-feed systems that as it's moving through the process and the raw water changes, we have to adapt to that. So that's why you'll see some change orders, because what we've designed isn't necessarily reality, so we'll have to adapt.
Great, thank you.
And then to Jeff's point, yes, the rate hearing is right around the corner.
Get all my questions then.
yay.
All right, and there was also a newsletter put out by our data team that has some of that information as well. So. What's still more.
We're gonna vote. All right, so, any other questions regarding that particular item A? All right, all those in favor? Okay, next up is the Mass DOT Municipal Pavement Program for Route 27.
Oh, Wayne, you're gonna do it here too.
All right, Wayne.
All right, perfect. So this is, yay for Maynard. So, Maynard, Maynard received a letter a little over a year ago. From MassDOT, who was sitting on what looked like some excess funding and targeted, some, numbered roads within the town of Maynard, and particularly identified a portion of Great Road that we previously paved that year under chapter 90, which was from the intersection of Parker Street to the Sudbury line. They approved our chapter 90, yet MassDOT allegedly clearly didn't communicate internally. So they approved our chapter 90, we paved, and then they sent that letter after. So we requested that they utilize a segment of numbered road within town of Maynard that's equivalent to that section, and they were amenable to that, which includes the location of Route 27 from Maynard Crossing, down to, Glenwood Cemetery through the intersection. So one of our worst areas, remaining that has been paved in some of our major routes. We are happy to also have a conversation when we're on site with MassDOT. They're gonna be doing some improvements to some of our handicap ramps and sidewalks on that intersection as well, as part of the process. So we are happy to say we received $343,303.90 towards paving projects that we do not have to utilize our chapter for.
Great.
We don't have to
Take
use
out the
any
little
or a lot.
Cobblestone.
Yes.
We don't need to use. Just to clarify, we don't have to use any of our money?
Zero.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other question I have is when, and I know the experts do what they do, when they go through that intersection, will they have to pave any part of Great Road? In
Well,
order to make sure it
it's-
doesn't just go.
Yeah,
from
they'll-
one-
The aprons, you know, on each approach where the loop detectors, well, where the old loop detectors were, so each approach maybe back about 100 feet on Great Road, they'll be repaving now.
Okay.
Including this.
On either side?
On either side.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we'll pretty much think of the entire.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, we were very happy to have that conversation. We nudged a little bit based off of their missteps, so they were amenable to that. We also, this was in coordination with the recent crack sealing. So not only did we receive this, we received every numbered road crack sealed over the fall, which we were also very excited for. So we're hoping this program continues to ramp up. It's somewhat of a newer program in their mind. They are also sitting on excess ARPA funds, so this may dry up, so we're able to match.
Is there any way to get those lights changed, the overhead?
Not a problem.
Now you're talking about.
Yeah, it's strictly paving.
Yeah,
Yeah, if we can approach, we did, and we were able to get handicap ramps, things that kind of fell within the scope, but intersection improvements. If you take a look at any of the capital improvements that I submitted, that's on there as well. That's the multi-million.
So I haven't had an updated copy of the pavement management plan in front of me, but why this section is supposed that southern section of 27 near the Sudbury line?
So this is by far the worst rated section of.
Okay,
Doesn't say it on the paper.
doesn't say it on the pavement plan. from what I can see.
Because we already told them that this.
Did the pavement plan reflect this
Mhm.
increase in pavement condition?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So the pavement forecast, was that, it's on your neck, isn't it?
Oh.
Yeah, we did it in order.
Oh,
Alright,
All right, so would anybody like to make a motion in regards to that paving
Move to approve the municipal pavement program project agreement with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, MassDOT, for improvements to Route 27 as presented, authorizing use of digital signatures if approved.
second.
any further questions?
when do you expect this to be completed?
I think they're aiming for spring, summer.
And there will be proper announcements, the traffic control and everything else?
So, yeah, they have an awarded contract, they're waiting for this agreement. Once they award contract, they'll be in constant communication with our office and we'll look to support Mass DOT as they have their own protocol, but that protocol is far less than what Maynard's expectations are in regards to notification. We will make sure that we notify through Facebook, I can reach all of our normal processes. And we will ask that their contract to provide digital signage as we had our previous contract to do when we did.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about detour through neighborhoods with
Yeah.
heavy traffic.
So they'll let us know prior to, and then we'll most likely organize that too.
Now, are they doing, so. I forget when we did 117, but do they typically, will Mass DOT work after rush hour?
We can definitely have that coordination conversation.
Yeah, normally they're gonna be, you know, after 9 and before
Okay.
4.
Yeah.
Typically, that's what they do.
Okay,
You know, as part of this, one thing we didn't mention, they're gonna be resetting all the drainage castings, catch basins, drain manholes, and so that's
And
what
that's
helps us,
awesome.
right? All through that stretch. And normally, since most of this is all mill and overlay, they can usually work with just 2 police details and they have an alternating traffic. They do it outside of peak hour, as you suggested.
Yeah.
Christine, and they keep, there's not too many detours. You know, I can't say that for certain until we actually work out the logistics, but on a road like this, I can't imagine why that wouldn't work effectively. You know, there'll be some temporary backups while they alternate the traffic and then it just moves again.
Unlike Gray Road was a reclamation project,
Yeah, right, right.
so grinding of all that, well, then
Yeah.
grading everything, which took a long time, and we were fighting the winter a little bit with that as well, so. Just a known overlay unless they break through and they start finding that the race course is probably on.
No, they're not.
Okay. All right, so any other questions about that? All those in favor? All right, so the next three items in order are pavement management plan update, hazard mitigation plan update, and stormwater enterprise. I don't care which order you take them, if you wanna, you know.
Pavement, we'll
However you want to
pavement
do it.
and then we'll flip it over.
Alright.
We have presenters here.
Okay, yeah. Yes,
So part of the pavement management plan was just a giant update. As you remember that myself and Wayne sat here and presented a pavement plan that bridged, calendar years, but not fiscal years. So it was a fall and spring project that also incorporated, LiDAR technology and a re-asset allocation, process of the entire community roadway system, with Beta. So I wanted to just provide you an update as Beta has finalized their pavement management plan for adoption from the board, including the development of a LiDAR platform that we are hoping to incorporate with our GIS. That would be an outward facing approach to what you see downstairs when you walk by our mapping system. So we'll hopefully be on our highway page under our DPW website. And it will have all of your PCI ratings. It will also have, because this was LiDAR technology, it has many visual points that you, as Jeff Thornburg in front of your house, can click on and see what the road condition look like compared to, say, Dave Gavin's, etc. We receive a lot of conversation of why did you pick that versus that, and that's not, that's like, hey, we kind of use the entirety of our pavement management plan and we move that process forward. But it just gives people a more visual understanding of our pavement conditions, also our deteriorating PCI rating. So that is a huge platform for us. We're hoping to get that launched very soon. I think that was a conversation we had today with our vendor as well. And Julia has been integral in regards to taking on a lot of our GIS in-house. So we're hoping to soon. I just wanted to make sure the board is fully aware of that our pavement management plan is finalized, up to date, and that our goal and objective is still to stick to our overall calendar year plan. So spring paving, which includes unaccepted roads that should be accepted for a town meeting, which include Heights Terrace, Fletcher, Allen, with the use of Chapter 90 funds. And again, I provide confidence that Chapter 90 funds can be utilized as originally approached, based on our recent meetings with Capcom's commitment to utilize local funds to support Acton, Hayes, and Concord. Again, all is subject to town appropriation and town meeting, but we would not bid out the pavement project until after town meeting anyways, with your confidence that we're utilizing Chapter 90 for our pavement plan and utilizing local funds for our Concord, Acton, Hayes intersection plan. We're just trying to line everything up because it's very advantageous when we can develop the bids, scope of work, and contract in advance of spring and summer construction season, so that we can launch our bids very soon and secure efficient and effective costs for contractors.
okay.
A lot of great data in here. It seems like other towns would be collecting it through similar methodologies. Do we have any way to compare where we are with other towns in the Commonwealth?
So it's funny, Jeff, on our walk with Mass DOT on our previous agenda item, they actually were shocked that the town of Maynard, one, even has a pavement management plan, two, is using LiDAR technology. It's actually not as common as you think. So we're actually ahead of the curve for a community of our size. The MassDOT actually, we gave them a lot of our pavement management data and our LiDAR to try to advance any more funding that they may be sitting on to do some of our numbered roads, because they put it into their system and they look at it as an overall. Comparative wise, we'd have to compare ourselves to cities. But what you can compare is our goal rating of our pavement index, and we are still degrading. So our funding mechanism is still a degrading factor. We are not allocating enough funds to stay ahead of that curve. And that PCI rating is actually very modest. Some communities have much higher PCI ratings. We are within the modest range in the world for our goal, and we're falling behind.
And presumably someone that's lower as well.
Yes, somewhat of war, but again, without,
There's no good database of that to get a comparable.
right, I mean, we could potentially explore some comp towns to see if they have it posted. We can reach out to their engineering, either if they have a full-time engineering staff or if they have an engineering consultant. But for the most part, I mean, Wayne could speak to VHB's contracts with other communities. They may not be apple to apple based off of the process.
It's a tough comparison because this LiDAR, as you mentioned, Jeff and Justin, it's relatively new, right? When I say within the last 5 years, right? It really wasn't used much before there. Before that, it was either physical driving or boots on the ground with people actually inventorying all the streets. A lot of these other communities that we may even be confident, they might probably, they might not have even updated their plan for the last 5 or 6 years. So it's going to be difficult to make an accurate comparison. The LiDAR is efficient. It's, it's the best technology we have right now to capture the road condition.
You're telling me is this methodology is great for helping us compare two different roads within town, but wouldn't be applicable to another town if they have a similar.
It's tough because not every town uses the same consultant, not every town uses the same methodology or the same inventory method. So you could look at it and they may not grade the PCIs exactly the same way. So it's a tough comparison on another town basis.
Yeah, the previous process, as Wayne said, boots on the ground, very subjective, depending on the engineering on site and what their determination rating is on the criteria. The beauty behind LiDAR, which is something that I actually, really said, Wayne, I think we should target this, is one, it becomes a visual component that yourself, Jeff, can look at. Meaning any one of our residents can look at roadways within our mapping system. And it's also one where you put multiple sets of eyes on the same exact approach. It's a snapshot in time, as opposed to a subjective engineer being on site.
Is there any correlation between the pavement management and sidewalk management?
So I wish we had more funding, but we actually don't provide a sidewalk management plan to this complexity. One, it's based truly on our allocation of localized funds and our limited chapter 90 funds. As seen in multiple presentations, the use of 100% of our chapter 90 funds on road pavement management is still falling behind. So unless chapter 90 magically doubles in allocation, or we start to allocate on a yearly basis a much larger portion of localized funds to infrastructure such as surface conditions, pavement and sidewalks, sadly, sometimes we have to play the game of what's worth. And we haven't done sidewalks in a while, but we do sidewalks on grant funding. So Glendale Street was part of our completed streets package award. You'll see major sidewalk improvements as part of our intersection improvement as well. So we try to capture those in larger construction part so that we kind of balance both. We are hoping that MassDOT's numbered payment system allocation takes a hold and really roots down, because as we discussed on site, Maynard's small chapter 90 allocation unfortunately consistently goes to our numbered routes, because those are our higher risk liabilities for insurance. And it's unfortunate that we're consistently paving routes that Mass DOT and the state are utilizing for federal transportation funds. So, as I push, I think they have a strong resolve to manage the number of routes, whether they're municipal or state. And that would allow us to use our limited allocation of chapter 90 funds on some of our secondary arteries. So some of your neighborhood roads that almost never get touched unless we have a gas main replacement and I'm able to strong arm Eversource into paving it. So those are the issues that we have currently.
We did, Mike, actually, it's gotta be like 5 years, 6 years ago now, we were able to do Great Road and Summer Street.
Right.
But that was after, I want to say it was at least 2 to 3 rounds of having free cash put
Right.
aside to be able to then have, and that was with that end project in mind. You know, so if we wanted to do that, that would be something that, you know, capital planning would have to kind of get on board with and say, okay, we're gonna put $100,000 or $200,000 a year for the next 2 or 3 years to be
Right.
able to hold that together.
So to Justin's point, since I've been here for 4 years, I put in a capital request for road and sidewalk. And typically we see road money that's localized, and even that is very small in proportion. And obviously sometimes larger projects take precedence. I would sit here and argue that the intersection of Concord and Hayes is by far most pressing right away improvement project sitting in front of us. And I think there is a strong push to see a lot of the sidewalk and pedestrian improvements that go with that. Even though it may not be a mile run, it is a mile altogether of crossroads and ADA improvements, pedestrian crossings, et cetera. So it's a major project.
All right, so, next up is unless anyone has any more questions, we'll move on to the hazard mitigation plan update.
All right, wanted the only you come up with here when you.
Do you want to, put this up there, his presentation up there? Can we do that?
Yeah, I can.
Do that. Wait, check.
Sure. Set us on a path and then leave.
I think that unfortunately be as big as I can get it, but.
Okay.
We'll work with it, Greg.
I'm just seeing the stuff we're doing, it's been a while.
Yeah, good.
Good, so you could keep you there. Oh, yeah, everybody would like that. It's just exciting because frankly, what we might do, get, you be coming up. Maybe you are.
Well, Sarah told me she was gonna be in person.
You don't worry. Actually, Greg Wilson, do you have a copy of the draft plan?
Yes, I do, because you were gonna pick one up.
I was.
Yes, it's out my window.
Perfect, right.
Just so I'm aware, did everybody in the book get, like, just the idea?
I haven't seen the actual hard copy.
You wanted the hard-
I wanted, yeah, you know,
Okay.
nighttime reading.
We've had it to the board, we have it online.
Yeah,
Some people look at it.
I,
One of those people.
so. Okay, Mark's in it. Anyways.
So you guys remember Donnie, and obviously you know me, so Donnie, I'll let you. Okay.
So it has been a long time since I've been here, in Donald School. I worked with Wayne and Sarah over at the UC. I was the project manager for the master plan that was adopted some years ago. And I also worked on an MVP plan grant, the summary of funding report and the community matrix that was developed for under the MVP program. I'm here today to talk about the hazard mitigation plan. For those that are aware, hazard mitigation plan is really good at Craig is, intends to reduce loss of life and property by minimizing the impact of natural disasters. For this particular project, we worked with community representatives to identify some high risk natural hazards, including winter storms, high winds, and drought, and along with medium risk hazards such as radiant hurricanes, flooding, heat waves, and extreme cold and dam failure. As part of this particular plan as well, we identify long-term strategies to protect the community, people and property from these natural hazards from occurring, not necessarily from occurring, but from the impacts that result from those hazards occurring. I should note that having a hazard mitigation plan enables the town and qualifies the town to receive FEMA grant funding, mitigation system funds through the FEMA program.
We built this plan off of the 2011 hazard mitigation plan that was adopted. However, this occurs in a 5-year cycle, so that plan was retired or expired in 2016. So for the new plan for 2024. So essentially, the town hasn't been able to pursue any FEMA grants, between 2016 and until this plan is formally adopted. Reviewed by FEMA, and formally adopted by the select board. That one caveat is that it doesn't prevent you from applying for hazard emergency funds through the next slide. As I mentioned, we work with the hazard mitigation action group that comprises a number of different departments, and I just want to recognize them today. Bill Nemser from planning, Chief Stowers, Chief Wallace, both the fire department at various times. Chief Noble, police department, Julia Flannery from the conservation agency, well, conservation agent, and John Planner. Justin Marco, of course, was the head of the action group, and we coordinated very closely with him and Wayne on this particular assignment. Michael Hatt, Priscilla Ryder from the Sustainability Committee, Richard Asman from the Board of Commissioner, Wayne Rico, of course, we talked about him, and Wayne White, the business manager for Cambridge Public Schools. So again, just wanted to recognize their contributions. We met several times during the planning process for a variety of different reasons to discuss a variety of different topics. We provided very valuable input throughout the entire process. And as I mentioned, I previously worked on the MVP planning report with some of your findings. So we built actions from that plan into the hazard mitigation plan for applicable. So, typically hazard mitigation plan has looked at those kinds of hazards and have what has occurred, protect you from similar events occurring in the future. This has a little bit more of a focus on climate change and what we need in the future in terms of projections. So you start to see things like drought and extreme temperatures being brought into the planning process. Next slide. So speaking of that planning process, again, we met with the action group between February and December of last year. They provided input on what hazards and concerns we were going to integrate into the plan, the goals for the plan itself. We conducted a public survey that hopefully all of you participated in that asked folks to we wanted to gauge their sense of awareness and perception hazards in Maynard and what those things would be. With the action group input and with the public input, we started to draft a plan. We drafted a plan for the hazard action mitigation action group consideration. We incorporated their comments. We also are in the process of socializing that plan more broadly to the public, and this is where we are right now. So we're waiting on all of those other comments to come in before we start finalize the draft, before it's being sent to the state and federal agencies for their review and comment. And that period could take a few months for us to get their comments back. Once we do, when we finalize, we get them okay. Then we present it to you again for formal adoption. As I mentioned, we did, next slide please, put out a public survey. And again, we just wanted to know what their perception of natural hazards are in Maynard. So we asked them what their most concerns were with respect to natural hazards, and the top 3 identified hazards were winter storms. Not surprisingly, we conducted a survey in February, so as they were taking the survey similarly, extreme cold, and then also blizzard. And we asked about the vulnerable areas, properties that are adjacent to the Alfred River, of course, downtown, and of course economic generating potential, and the water supply. But it moved us to take a look at the 2011 plan and not ignore it. There was a lot of great work that was done as part of that planning effort. The mitigation actions that were incorporated into that, some were complete, like the correct truck and the fire station, some are ongoing, like the tree trimming fund, bridge maintenance and repair that's ongoing, culvert and drainage upgrades that's ongoing, open space protection and land acquisition.
One activity that was not done, that we did incorporate into the 2024 draft is the furthering of public education on the town's website regarding the preparedness and flood insurance program. Just making sure that people are aware of the flood insurance program and that, they have the resources and they go to if they have questions about natural health and how to be prepared prepared for or respond to natural hazards that are, discussed more in depth in the plan itself. Next slide. So, as part of this update, I just want to give you a high level overview of the mitigation actions that we did ultimately include in the draft plan, aside from that educational piece. Flood zone drainage systems, street infrastructure, improving flood resiliency to the town hall, police department, all of these strategies that are identified in bold, by the way, are those high priority actions. We did go through a process with the action group that identified what's the high priority action versus a medium versus a low. The town hall, police department, where we're sitting right now, it's adjacent to the floodplain, we have the river flood, or behind it. So just making sure that this building is resilient to potential flooding from the Aspen River. Completing a drainage study and ensuring adequate drainage at roads and rail trails, the Route 127, Route 117, highly trafficked roadways that are prone to flooding and have flooded in the past. Bridges, just completing the structural improvements of the Aspen River crossings, one of which is a Walnut Street Bridge, that's borderline structure defective and also highly trafficked. So we will make sure that that's going to be made more resilient. Wastewater infrastructure, just exploring enforcement mechanisms for LID low impact development. If it doesn't touch the conservation commission, then there's really no way of enforcing such enforcing those mechanisms. Develop a stormwater enterprise fund, which is an offset the cost associated with the community maintenance and ongoing drainage infrastructure. So we wanted, I know there's a topic on tonight that we can get more in detail on, but that's one of the high priority actions that we identified as part of this draft hazard mitigation plan. Water supply systems, so we already had a conversation about that tonight with the report. Updating the treatment facilities and other infrastructure to make sure that there are definitely changes that may experience with respect to water quality. PFAS is an issue. There's other chemicals of concern that are of priority that we want to address, and then also quantity. So we have a number of different housing developments that are going in, some under construction now, some that are on the way, really due to the zoning act. Additional housing is going to be coming online. So can you handle the loads? And right now you're obviously not. Utility facilities, some are within the flood zones and floodplain areas, so if they are inundated and they are redundancy for them. And that's the perspective federal substation. Communication equipment to make them more robust. You also need a point of contact with the AT&T to be able to make communication there. Dams, improving communication with private dam owners, critical municipal hazard in every pump facility. So the DPW, there's fuel tanks that need to be located at the highway garage. There's a new DPW highway garage facility that would be nice to have, more located away from the Aspen River and Taylor Brook. Populations, the enhanced flood endurance and also hazard preparedness obligation as I mentioned before, that's the material from the 2011 plan. Prepare a performance assessment to address language and speed needs and mobility. One thing that we noted is the American with Disabilities Act transition plan is not state compliance, and they bring that up to compliance is one aspect of that particular mitigation action. Develop emergency plans for town-owned buildings, including this one, the most social connections with the neighborhoods to support emergency communications, and other expanding public education on the town's comprehensive emergency plan. So the emergency plan is different from this housing mitigation plan. The emergency plan is more on the response side. This is not more on the planning side to prevent those emergencies in the future. But as part of mitigation, emergency preparedness and planning for those emergencies is part of it, and that's why we have some of those related actions in the plan itself. Businesses encourage more employers to plan recovery. I know those numbers that we're climbing up, but if employees that are reside outside of Maynard don't receive word about natural hazards that are taking place in Maynard and end up going to work,
they could be a problem. We're just, increasing their ability to understand what's happening, particularly in these situations. Schools, assessment facilities, for wildfire risk, we combined in heat and drought, and we started to get, create an equation for, wildfires that exist shore, some of them are within more heavily wooded areas or adjacent to heavily wooded areas, that we want to make sure that we're assessing them for that potential. Natural resources, development and plans to implement a townwide green infrastructure plan, that would be supported by the MS4 program and requirement. So green infrastructure plan would reduce, the demand on and demand for additional gray infrastructure that would be more costly. Increasing dedicated open space, very similar to that, with respect to green infrastructure, creating, inside more, pervious areas. And some of those open spaces can serve as flood mitigation, storage, purposes as well. Wetland preservation, very similar to what I just mentioned. And then lastly, the historic resources, we've made known to us that, have critical historic records are stored in this building, which is, subject to flooding. There's other records that are stored at the main through rented spaces here, but just making sure that we're identifying storage locations that are flood-proof. And then lastly, if you can go to the last slide, I think, as I mentioned, we're still receiving public comment and finalizing the draft HMP, the hazard mitigation plan. So if we haven't provided your comments on the plan, we're happy to take them, happy to revise the plan as necessary before we start to consolidate it and distribute it to the state and to either federal government, MEMA, and FEMA, their review and comment. Again, that process can take a few months. So when we expect to come back to you, potentially for, to adopt the plan, that might be in the early summer. Tony, ideally, when would you like the board and other constituents to have any comments back to you guys to incorporate? It has been out, posted to the website for some time and available, with very copy format. So if we can get it within a week, within 2 weeks, if that's not problematic for anybody's schedule, that would be appreciated. This project has been going on for some time. We want to make sure that we're going to get you a full plan that can be adopted and qualify you for the grant opportunities that are required.
And so I feel like we reviewed something that I thought was this, that Julia presented months ago. What was that?
Yeah, no, sorry. The open space.
Okay, all right, because that was the same thing. We had to provide comments and they were compiling off of my fault. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was the same, but like a different iteration.
Yeah, it's a lot of-
Yeah.
Yeah, the very adopted.
This is very. I will say we reviewed.
I'll make sure I can find it.
One overall comment, I felt when I read, I had the action, proposed mitigation action, but it was pretty unclear on what that was. And sometimes I could dig down and see it in the rationale. Sometimes I could dig down and see it in the comments. Sometimes it's a little harder to find. Sometimes it's pointed to the MVP, which is fine if that is in there. But one kind of overall suggestion is make very clear tactically what would success look like. What is the actual action being proposed by that lead champion responsive there? How do we compel Eversource to do their one action that I saw in there? It seemed everything had an owner that is within the town except for that particular one.
The
I think it was the raising of public utility, it was number 7, provide protection for utilities in flood zones or flood prone zones, primarily looking at substations.
is what they're being touch with our community leader, which who's not who I talked to today. I talked to someone else, but we can look into that. We can find out if they. I mean, my expectation is the utilities are also subject to FEMA and MEMA guidelines.
So this is one particular substation right behind your house, actually very similar, very close to behind your house. Everyone's is well aware of this being an impact or high risk area. I think for us, Greg was kind of alluding to it, is we can actually provide the finalized hazard mitigation concern to that they provide improvements there. A lot of the recent raising of the poles on Main Street has to do with a long-term plan that they have for increasing capacity of that stuff. So they're somewhat in the mix, but they don't tell us all their plans, but a lot of the outages you see that are loosely in Justine Dave's neighborhood, sometimes down by Mayor Crossing, you see those weird blackage outages that come out of left field. A lot of that has to do with the infrastructure constraints of their substation behind your house and their grid. They have to do a large investment within the town of Maynard, which they're working on. Have been for over a year, including today's improvement that was.
Doesn't sound like there's a big role for the town to play here, other than to bug Eversource. I mean, is that really what I'm looking at here?
Probably.
Sometimes it's also to inform our constituents and our residents the responsibility and role of the players. There's an assumption, even Chris said at the end of the day, I know Chris knows we're not a public electric provider, but sometimes there's an assumption that we also provide the electricity. There's an assumption that most of the dams in Maynard are the responsibility of the public sector. None are. They're all private entities. But within this role in this plan, we are, one, identifying it to MEMA and FEMA, we're also identifying it as well. We can pass that along. I think one of the action items in regards to the dams was better communication with the private dam owners and the public sector. Whether it's a reporting mechanism that they do to the state and us receiving a copy, or just emergency plans and mitigation plans they may have, and just providing that information to our emergency personnel.
On reading the report, as much as I did at least, certainly that issue of the dams was a surprise to me that they're privately owned. What kind of responsibility do those owners have to ensure that those dams are indeed fine? Because I don't remember the details, but I seem to recall that a couple of the dams were listed as not critical, but in need. So where's the accountability for that? And
They have to report that to the state of Massachusetts, and a particular department monitors that, very similar to the bridge situation. So a majority of the bridges in Maynard are Maynard-owned bridges, yet the Department of Transportation does a yearly inspection, and then they have risk factors. And as you've seen with Florida Road Bridge, if it becomes beyond reproach, they will adopt it within their bridge replacement program. The dam process has a very similar situation with the state. They report that to the state. And the state puts together their inspection processes, et cetera. And then each private dam owner is responsible to adhere to whatever those recommendations are. Again, I'll go to the fact that I've been dealing with a resident in Sudbury who truly believes that the Department of Public Works controls the Ben Smith Dam and we can raise and lower it.
So I just looked, the Department of Conservation and Recreation has an Office of Dam Safety. And they do point out that dam owners are responsible for registering their dams, notifying the Office of Property Transfer, and inspecting and maintaining their dam safe operations.
so do these owners own adjacent land, or is it just purely the dam itself?
Well, I can tell you the Ben Smith Dam is a real easy one. So the canal that actually funnels the majority of the Aspet River over to the mill was designed to power the mill. So that's why they own the dam. They built the dam to utilize the water to support their hydroelectric, and before that, just their processes in general. So they switched from using it for mechanical functions to hydroelectric, et cetera. They actually own the entirety of the canal, the rail trail road. So a lot of that is private owned, and they own the dam itself.
The point Justin was making, the communication could be better, right? So Justin mentioned Mass DOT inspects our bridges, right? They provide copies of those reports to us. I don't remember ever seeing anything from VCR on any of these video inspections, right? So that's something we can definitely improve on. Communication with these guys, and maybe it's just a phone call, maybe it's coordination, but the communication we can get that.
Well, I believe that within the last year, when they had those problems out in the Leominster area, that it really highlighted the problem with the dam, because Leominster actually had a failed dam as a result of, that led to devastating issues out there. And we had that discussion here shortly after that about, our dams and making sure that we're not gonna fall into the same predicament. Cause the Leominster Dam was privately owned, that failed, and they had been warned, and, everything else, just no action taken.
So David, to your point, a lot of this is making sure that Maynard is in, we're in following MEMA and FEMA's role here, putting our private dam owners on notice with an approved report, understanding that it's a priority. And if there's ever an issue in the future, we're advantageous for award from FEMA and MEMA as part of a process of sadly mitigation for repairs, even if it's not privately owned. And again, I know that's Chief Stowers prior to Chief Wallace was in constant communication with the Miller Maine Group in regards to their two dams. And I believe Chief Wallace is continuing that conversation, which those are the two high-risk dams that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously dams usually fail when it's high water level anyway. And we already have flooding when it's high water level in certain residence areas, as well as a big concern is downtown, where if that ever overflowed, it floods right downtown, and there goes, a lot of the businesses.
You got it, Dave. Yeah, the mill complex itself is dead, and that is the scariest part. But I know there's also a push by ORS to have dams incrementally removed from the alphabet for recreational purposes. So there is alternative processes moving forward. Removal of private dams and public dams up and down the alphabet.
Thank you.
My point goes back, there's a lot of great information about the different dams and the hazard ratings, but the action item is for the Maynard Fire Department to communicate to the town entity driving that. It's supposed to be Eversource one, where I feel it's like, okay, great, and Eversource can stonewall us if they so choose on that particular one, but the identification of which substations or something like that to be actionable by town staff as opposed to a non-town entity.
I think sometimes the leverage, typically I used to deal with National Grid in my previous situation. A lot of times when the board or the council is well aware of issues in regard to the electric utility, when they come before you for requests for poll hearings and things of that nature, they are consistently reminded of past discussions, what their approaches are as part of a leveraging package. It was very successful in my previous situation. It could be successful here. Again, adopted plans set the tone. It's like, well, you're adopting this plan and you have identified through your technical experts that these are high risk to your residents and constituents.
I'll just add that each of these different mitigation measures has a leader in the analysis support. So if there is not, in the case of Eversource, like you're not going to harden Eversource substations, right? So you have no control over that, so that you can influence. So that's where we built Eversource. So that their role is to put them around their stop and solve their mitigation plans. It's on the radar. Could be on their radar, but maybe it's not priority, so it's more pushing the measuring. They raise the level of priority.
Okay, thank you.
And just one follow-up too is, I'm sure Greg related it to the board, but typically per year or every other year, Eversource will provide us their emergency plan for gas and electric, and vice versa. The conversation could be twofold backwards, understanding that when they provide us their emergency plans, we provide them our emergency plans, including hazard mitigation plans or MVP processes moving forward.
Okay. Just one other question, switching gears a bit on the Walnut Street Bridge, which is flagged as high priority. How is there a current plan to get that somewhere with it? What do we have a funding plan for that? Is it going on to the capital
Isn't
plan
there a
committee?
federal?
What's that?
I thought that was a federal plan.
That's what Matt.
So there's the two bridges. So as you know, Florida Road is down.
Right.
So, and Lori Trahan, before she was redistrict, was able to secure IRA funds for Main Street. So
That's the
adjacent
one
to
I'm thinking of, yeah.
115 or John Crater.
Right at Walnut.
Yep, and Wayne has been in constant communication with their preliminary survey and engineering team, as they're developing plans, and we're hoping to see that come to fruition within the next 2 years. Walnut Street is the one, adjacent to the Mill Main of Walnut Street. That bridge has not been identified yet, or MassDOT has not come to us with a plan, but technically it's ours unless they adopt it. So yes, every year we're putting for capital requests, for dam inspection reports beyond MassDOT. So our own engineering reports to come up with preliminary design, and have identified that from past pictures.
Bridge inspection.
Beyond bridge inspection, so the bridge feasibility study.
He's been dancing.
Oh, I did, I'm sorry.
We do have funding for, the Main Street Bridge already. Didn't Lori Trahan
Yep, yeah,
obtain? Okay,
yeah, Jeff's talking about the Walnut.
right, yeah.
Yeah, those are the three critical dams, the bridge by the Ben Smith Dam. Yeah, the bridge by the Ben Smith Dam on 117 was previously identified as high risk, but then recent inspections have been downgraded to low risk. And I think, am I missing the bridge. I think that's the Main Street Bridge, the Summer Street Bridge was replaced less than 10 years ago. I think that's everything.
I think it's Walnut in,
Yeah.
in 117.
Yeah, well,
And the small one, on 117, over the canal.
yeah.
The downgraded bridge, was that because the standards changed or because the inspection and quality changed?
Wayne could probably speak to that. Was that a deck issue?
There was one, if I remember right, that bridge on 117 is one failing side. If you're headed west, it's the left side of the bridge as you go over the bridge was failing. We tried to get the district's attention on that. They said they put it on their plan. It's just, I think, Jeff's point, other bridges are more of a priority than that because there's no sidewalks over on that side. There's nothing other than there's a slab that's failing, but it doesn't seem to be affected by traffic or anything. So it's less of a priority than some of these.
And the slab is, so the structural support of the bridge is going to compromise. That'll lay road. So, and their metric is lower risk than some other bridges, including Main Street. I will say the Main Street Bridge replacement is even better than. There's some major issues there.
As complicated as the utilities were in Florida, they're more complicated on Main Street.
They will.
All right, any other questions about that?
Good work, thank you.
All right, MS4 time.
All right, Sarah. Talk to you.
So you're up.
Okay,
Talking about stormwater.
is it same as like where you can't see the whole slide, or is there a way?
So I can, if you would like to log into your computer, like I can call into the Zoom meeting, I can do that. Otherwise, because I only have the PDF, I think best what we'll do is going through that a little bit. So I can capture,
I don't think it's worth logging
The
in.
board also has on the computer.
Yeah.
1922.
If I gave you the power. I don't.
you go, yeah.
You want to do that?
Sure.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Oh.
They're called wedding. I'm not gonna get out. It's married over 5 years.
Tires about this thing.
That's great, get set up. You guys remember Sarah?
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess as you go, so.
Donnie's presentation segued right into this because. as
Yeah.
Indicated, we don't have any funding source for all of our stormwater. So Sarah's gonna talk about some options.
Yeah, it was great to have these two presentations aligned because a lot of the hazards, as you saw, have to do with flooding and stormwater. So anyway, just to reintroduce myself, I'm Sarah Nalvin. I am a water resources scientist and project manager at VHB. I've been working with the town since 2020, doing a lot of different environmental stuff, but largely stormwater. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Basically want to talk about how a stormwater enterprise fund could help fund stormwater management in the town of Maynard. I think most of you saw me last winter give a similar presentation. So since then, we have actually made some progress on the beginning phases of a stormwater utility feasibility study. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the progress we've made, and tell you about what we're thinking next steps. So, next slide. So I wanted to start by just painting a little picture of stormwater needs in Maynard, with a few examples. So here's my first example. This is a stream. There you can see a stream here in Maynard. It drains north to the Aspet River. And if you look closely at the aerial, you'll see it kind of drains a good chunk of Maynard, goes through this big wetland complex. And then if you go to the next slide, I think this is my only animation. You can see the stream right there gets culverted. Basically, it goes underground into a pipe. And that's right where the Presidentials is. And Hayes Street, it goes right by Hayes Street through a bunch of backyards. And so if you go to the next slide, basically the issue is here that this culvert is in really, really poor condition. A 2015 investigation that the DPW commissioned found that basically you can see just this is just a clip from the report, and you can see everything in red is a different called out issue with that small section of pipe. There's fractures, there's collapsed pipe, there's garages covering drains. And basically, you know, the report concluded that this could lead to catastrophic flooding. And sadly, plans were developed in 2016 to repair this pipe, but they never came to fruition because there's not been funding. And there's still no funding, and this pipe is still sitting, receiving a ton of drainage. As you saw, that stream was a large stream. And still, you know, we don't have the funding to fix it. So next slide, that's example number one.
For the record, Sarah, being generous, that's not really one pipe, it's a series of multiple different sizes, large to small, small to large. That was cobbled together by former DPW directors to solve problems as those flooding, you know, flooding got worse in that area, or some of those houses were built back in the 1800s, etc. It's a mishmash to say, but again, no real funding out there.
Theoretically, the couplings could just.
Right.
Yeah, David, I mean, I physically like inspected this whole thing. It's a mishmash of pipes connected with other structures together with couplings and fittings that none of it is standard and none of it is long for the world. It's the only way I can say it. Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I guess just to add one more point, I mean, you're already kind of messing with nature and taking a little gamble when you put a pipe into, when you put a stream into a pipe, you know, you're constricting that volume that the stream now has to take up. But you're gambling even more when the pipe that you're putting that stream into is in this kind of condition.
When, you know, when these houses were built back in the 1800s, it was all about real estate, right? So they saw a wetland, there was no environmental regulations at all, right? They said, well, let's just, Sarah's point, let's just put this stream in a pipe and build a house next to it. And then Justin and I get called time after time, how come my basement has water in it? How come the water level is? Because it's a wetland that they built your house on top of, so none of that's good. You can't change that, right? The only way to change it is to completely put a new system in, get it away from that, and then maybe you can help.
So yeah, so that's it. Nice, hopefully compelling example number one. Example number two takes place in the municipal parking lot behind Main Street, like right behind CVS and the Maynard Outdoor Store. And we have found in the network of drainage pipes under the parking lot that there are many instances of non-stormwater flows entering the drainage system and flowing to the Aspet River. So basically through the Maynard MS4 permit or EPA administered stormwater permit, Maynard is actually required to investigate basically all drainage pipes in town looking for non-stormwater flows. And so through these investigations, we have detected issues all over town, but this particular catchment is just what I want to focus on as an example. So yeah, in this one area alone, there were 7 instances of separate non-stormwater flows entering the drainage system This picture is just one example, so that's a pipe coming into Maynard's drainage system from near Subway. And that's like a yellow grease slug basically oozing into Maynard's drainage system and eventually making its way to the Aspet. The screenshot below that is a letter that the DPW wrote to CVS. It's an enforcement letter because a different instance is there's a pipe coming from the CVS parking lot that is constantly flowing with water, which shouldn't be the case. It should only, that you should only have flow when there's rain or snow melt in the drainage system. But this pipe is always flowing. And when we sampled it, it has basically the chemical signature of sewage. So that is another example of one of these non-stormwater flows going into the Aspet. And so obviously that's not good, but what's really not good is that under the MS4 permit, these non-stormwater flows are called illicit discharges. And what that name implies is they're illicit, they're illegal. And so the MS4 permit requires that you detect them and remove them as soon as possible, but there's these drop dead deadlines that are very quickly approaching to make sure you've removed all of them. And this tends to be an area that EPA focuses on when it comes to audits and fines, because you can see it's really, impactful to water quality. This kind of stuff is getting into the water bodies. So we've seen a number of towns and cities in Massachusetts that have been fined for non-compliance with illicit discharge removal, and several in recent years have actually been issued consent decrees. So like court orders basically saying they're not even saying comply with the MS4 permit. The requirements are more stringent than the MS4 permit when you get a consent decree. So yeah, that's example number 2. Next slide.
Before we move on, this would normally be on the property owner to adjust if detected, is that correct?
Good question. So yeah, the illicit discharge stuff gets complicated because yes, like in the case of CVS, it's easy because that pipe is coming from CVS's property into Maynard's drainage system, so we can say CVS, it's on you to remove it. But there are a lot of instances where it's in the drainage system and it's coming from Maynard's drainage system.
And the source may not be clear.
Yeah, the source may be clear. It's largely what happens in a lot of these cases is the sanitary sewer pipes are old, the storm sewer pipes are old, they're all cracked, they're all near each other, and sewage is kind of exfiltrating out of the sewer pipes and into the storm.
So the use of the stormwater funding would more be on repairing Maynard infrastructure, not on enforcement of private infrastructure, or a combination of the two.
Definitely a combination, but there would be a lot needed for just
Maynard side,
repairing
maybe some.
Maynard's. Yeah, we've gone after CVS because that's easy. Takes a lot less funding than dealing with repairing.
Have they responded?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Wait, that was kind of.
It's ongoing.
It's ongoing, but they've been really responsive.
They
And
took immediate action to try to line some of that stuff and try to repair stuff. They were very responsive. It was good.
Is the health store,
what?
the health store,
Right.
yeah, the rest.
Our bylaws are very, so we have a lot of leverage.
Okay, so final example, I want to talk about the Aspet River, and that it's a real shame that swimming is not recommended in the Aspet River right now, because the water is just not clean enough. And as summers get hotter with climate change, it's going to be even more of a shame that Maynard residents are going to want to cool off, and they're not going to have an easy, free place to cool off. And that's going to be even more of a shame for those low-income populations who don't have a country club pool or a vacation house on Cape Cod. I will acknowledge that water quality in the Aspet has improved a lot in the last few decades. You can see that graph of phosphorus, which is a pollutant, has gone way down since the 90s, and that's awesome, but it's still not at the level it needs to be at for swimming to be recommended. Yeah, that's my last example. But yes, it's too bad we can't.
Just one question on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so is that only in Maynard?
No, definitely not.
But so is it, it's not recommended in other towns also?
Yeah, in
Okay.
the, that screenshot I showed is the Mass Rivers Alliance website, and it's just talking about the alphabet in general, it says it's not recommended for funding here, so. Yeah, I mean, the thing about water bodies is they cross the town boundaries, and
Right.
so, yeah, it's not just Maynard, but.
And what's the Mass River Alliance looking for to determine if, what would make it safe to swim in the Assabet for?
Question, I would say the main issue is probably bacteria levels, and, it comes right back to the sewage and the leaking and, leaching into the water bodies through these old pipes, and, so it's bacteria levels. Phosphorus levels are also too high, and that can cause toxic algae blooms, but that's, I would say bacteria is probably the stronger parameter.
And to what extent is that pollution that's being put into the river in Maynard versus what's upstream from it?
It's a good question. I can't say I know the answer offhand, but I know that ORS is actually doing a bacteria tracking study right now on the Assabet. So maybe they will have the answer for us soon enough, but we're certainly.
Right.
And to Sarah's point, we participated with ORS. They approached our office and we provided them all of our resources from our S4 and continuation support as they have the ability to kind of cross borders and put together the budget for adoption.
So, all right, so what do these three examples have in common? Well, you've probably caught on, but they're all stormwater, water resources related issues. And they're all issues that the town just does not have enough funds to solve. Next slide. And I'll also point out that these examples are emblematic of many other examples just like it in town. We were just talking about the hazard mitigation plan. There's also the master plan and the MVP plan that all have many action items related to stormwater in them. And Donnie actually pointed this one out too, but just as an example, one of the action items in the hazard mitigation plan is improve flood resilience for town hall and police department building we're in right now. And that's a high priority. There's many more just like it. And there's probably many more stormwater issues and action items that we're not even aware of because we don't know what we don't know. We don't even have the funds to do all the inspections we need to do to know how many other degraded types just like Hayes Street there are, or how many other non-stormwater flows just like that Hayes Street. So, yeah, so there's a lot of these issues all across town. Next slide. And part of the reason for this is because the cost of stormwater management is increasing. So we've got aging infrastructure in dire need of maintenance. We have a permit with an MS4 permit with pretty hefty storm requirements. And then there's actually, we're in permit year 6 right now. It should be a 5-year permit term, but EPA is delayed, but there should be a new MS4 permit coming out this year and requirements are expected to get even heftier. And there's no funding mechanism to keep pace with, maintaining this infrastructure, complying with these permit requirements. We just don't have a way to sustainably fund this. So next, I want to talk about what we've done so far to try to solve this problem. So over the last year, we have initiated a stormwater utility feasibility study. We've talked about this, in years past when I've given this similar presentation, but essentially, it's a study where you evaluate basically the practicality of implementing the stormwater utility fee, raising an enterprise fund, and you flesh out all the details of implementing an enterprise fund, basically so that by the time the stormwater utility feasibility study is complete, you're ready to implement a utility. So the first step of a study is to quantify your stormwater funding program needs, your stormwater program funding needs. And so we did this, that way you can figure out how much revenue you need to raise, if you do implement a fee, but also figure out what your deficit is and how much you need this. So we did this, and, I don't know if any of you checked out the spreadsheet that we attached to the materials, but you're welcome to after this. That's our draft funding needs. So that's basically in an ideal world, what our, a fully funded stormwater program in Maynard would look like. And it came out to 1.2 million per year in FY '24. So the next slide, this is kind of just a summary of the main tab of that spreadsheet. Basically, that spreadsheet has a list of every category of expenditure, and then historic costs and projected costs. So you can see here every category of expenditure. We've got all the salaries on the left, and then everything from fuel costs to repair, paying a contractor to repair drainage infrastructure, to the street sweeping. And it comes out to, like, you can see at the bottom, a little under.
So I just have a quick question. You said the words that in the perfect world, it
Yeah.
would be this.
Yeah,
So what is it in we're just getting started, but we want to do something, but we're not gonna be able to afford that? What is the
I don't know
value
if Dustin wants
engineering?
to answer that, and I guess I shouldn't have said in a perfect world, because we were realistic with this. This was in a world where we're complying with the MS4 permit and keeping on top of it. It's not in a world where we're doing everything under the.
Well, I mean, I look
Yeah,
at like the DPW, looking for another staff member for like administration, but that you've got staff, so like.
So
they-
the administration would be the program, so this program would have a revenue collection service, so you have to think of this as a water and sewer, now it's a stormwater utility.
Right,
To look at our water and sewer budgets. So unlike water and sewer, there's no treatability process here, which is why it's only 1.2 compared to 2.4 or 3.5 for sewer. So this is, in retrospect, very similar to our utilities, each one being run in a very similar manner. The administration here would be doing all the reporting to DEP. They'd be doing the cost revenues, the billing, all of that process based off of the projected approach we would do to raise the revenue. Most likely would be a quarterly billing that we talked about in years past, non-flat fee, a tiered fee situation like that. So again, it would be very similar to our water and sewer staff that we have now. It's just particular to this utility. We do anticipate that the upcoming 5-year MS4 will start to require treatability processes for stormwater before it enters the aspect. This does not include that. This is 100% just a collection system approach. In essence, this is the program that would allow us to sustain moving forward and meeting MS4 requirements and proving that we're moving in the right direction. Anything's better than nothing. So right now we throw $120,000, $140,000. What that does is 120 to 130 goes to our consultants to just barely meet the bare bone minimum year by year service for the MS4 process. The other remaining 10,000 goes to our catch basin cleaning, which does 1/5 of our town per year.
Yeah.
Street sweeping right now is under the DPW, so what this also does is you would see a change in the appropriation or allocation of our DPW budget. A lot of the resources identified here will be direct operations as opposed to shared operations. So right now, our highway staff does our sweeping for spring and fall. They do a lot of this repair, which also inhibits them from doing other things such as road repairs, sidewalk repairs, you name it, everywhere else that the highway staff is. A lot of this can be fluctuated and changed. Obviously, $1.2 million to start, maybe a big gap. That's a conversation we can have moving forward. The feasibility study and its full completion will kind of determine, one, like anything, we set our budgets at what we believe the operation should be. Then we see how much revenue we have to raise, allocate it, and then we can budget engineer it per se, value engineer that process. What can we afford and what can't we afford? But we're only going through the feasibility study with $10,000 of excess money in our yearly line, and this is as far as we've made it.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, right as you were talking, I was like, well, the answer to the question is, we need a feasibility study continuation to figure out the answer to the question. Because, right, this is kind of the first step, but then the rest of the feasibility study involved determining a rate structure. How much are, I mean, because I assume another question you all probably have is how much is it gonna cost
Right.
an individual resident? So that's a huge part of the feasibility study. And if maybe if we don't like how much it's gonna cost, then we dial back how much revenue we wanna raise and go from there. So that's all what the feasibility study phases that we haven't gotten to yet.
And just kind of to help kind of understand the cost analysis. Field Street, we just recently received an article last annual town meeting to fix a puddle in front of one resident's house. That was a self-reaching basin not tied into a connected service that cost us $50,000.
No, I,
So like
yeah,
that,
I'm aware of
that's
that.
part
but
of
it's
the
just-
cost overage
Right.
process that happens. And then if you look at our capital submissions, I would say about 33% of DPW's capital improvement requests are stormwater related, multi-million-dollar process. So again, this is just what we could do in-house to do that versus external and versus what we're currently doing. So there's a combination that can easily be had, like any budget development. We can absolutely have a conversation of how do we spread the load, how do we move in, where do we go? But with all the other processes DPW is constantly taking on and the enforcement of DEP regulations for water and sewer, we're just gonna balance the staff that we have in other directions. We may have staff. You haven't seen my water and sewer budget yet. It has a staffing plan with an additional staff member, DEP policy ramming it down. And our staff is currently focusing on meeting that public drinking water utility. So our staff can't keep growing, I can't keep up with the growing policy and regulation. This is a growing policy and regulation. We're either gonna pay for a consultant or we're gonna start to balance it in-house. That's the complication we have.
All right, next slide, I guess. So we've jumped the gun on a lot of this, but, you know, like Justin was just saying, basically, so funding needs, we've determined 1.2 million. And then Justin was saying, you know, in FY 24, we have a $120,000 operating budget for stormwater, which goes to MS4 compliance and catch basin cleaning. And then we spent 50,000 on a capital article for Field Street. So that's 170,000, in actuality, 1.2 million needs, a deficit of about 1 million. So next slide, how are we going to close this deficit? So one option, can we increase the operating budget? I think we all know that the historical maximum of our operating budget for stormwater is 120,000, and we're probably not going to raise it to 1 million. And we get it done with a capital budget increase. Historically, most years, a capital budget for stormwater is 0. The historical maximum that I'm aware of is 200,000. So probably not. Can we get it done with grants? Well, it'd be pretty challenging to raise $1.2 million in grants, but even if we could, even if we were good enough at getting them, there's probably not grants available that cover all the aspects of a stormwater program. Disaster relief funds, possibly, but we don't want a disaster to happen. And you also can't apply for relief if FEMA can determine that the disaster was due to deferred maintenance. So that's where we're left with the stormwater utility or enterprise fund. It really does feel like the only option left. So next slide, I'll just I feel like we've been talking about stormwater enterprise funds, but let me just make sure everyone's on the same page about what they are. So this is, an enterprise fund would be a municipal fund dedicated only to stormwater work. It wouldn't rely on the general fund, and it would basically come from property owners paying a fee, and there's a number of ways you can structure that fee. But the general premise is that the fee is proportionate to each property's use of the stormwater system. Basically, how much stormwater is that property generating that's going into Maynard stormwater? And so, you know, it's a service. It's each property is using that stormwater system, and that's why it's called a fee and not a tax. It's like water and sewer fees, you're using that. So next slide. Just to give you a little more context, a lot of Massachusetts municipalities are doing this and more are doing it every year. This is actually, I'm not even sure that 2022 on is comprehensive. I do a DEP graph that I tried my best to update, but I don't even know that I captured all of them. But you can see that in 2016, when the last MS4 permit came out, we saw an increase because people got scared. They said, there's no way we're gonna meet these requirements without implementing something like this. And I'll just also point out that it's not just big cities that are doing this. I highlighted some compounds in red, but it's cities and towns of all sizes. And, you know, often the fee, you know, is per property owner for a residential property owner in a lot of these towns is $35 to $40 a year. So it can really, you can really generate a lot with not that much for, you know, for your average resident. Next slide. So, for now, we do think it would be smart to continue this feasibility study. These are kind of the 5 main tasks that you can break a stormwater utility feasibility study into. So task 1 is defining funding needs, which we've just kind of completed a draft of, as you pointed out, Justine. That will be iterative, but the draft at least is complete. But there's all these other tasks. Determining the fee structure is a big one. Education and outreach is huge because you need to draft and pass a bylaw to get this implemented, and that's not going to pass if you don't have really good, solid education and outreach. So yeah, there's all these other phases, but the idea is combined. Like I said, by the time you get to the end, you've evaluated the feasibility, and if the feasibility seems good, you're ready to implement by the time this is over. Yeah, we're basically trying to find funding for phases 2 through 5 right now. And just to kind of give you an update of where we're at, we're currently pursuing some grant opportunities. The biggest focus right now is an EPA 319 grant. So that's a grant I have had success in securing in the past, but it is quite competitive. So definitely no guarantees, but that's what we're focusing on. And it would be wonderful if we got one and it helped us move this feasibility study along. But either way, we're gonna keep trying to push it along, and that's kind of where we're at. So next slide, just to kind of summarize what I hope you take away from this presentation. In the town of Maynard, we have a lot of stormwater to manage and a lot of MS4 requirements to comply with. And these costs are only increasing, and we really don't have a way to fund this. Other than the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, it would provide sustainable funding and a lot of additional benefits. And like I said, other towns across the state and also across the whole country are really doing this because they're realizing this is a really good option and kind of the only option. So yeah. We believe that completing the feasibility study and implementing a stormwater utility is worth the investment, and we're moving forward with that for now. So thank you, and happy to answer any more questions.
Are there any more questions?
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
I know that the feasibility coming from fee structure and all that, but how do we determine the amount of non-pervious surface when looking at these things?
Yeah, so doing it through a GIS overlay is probably the easiest way to determine that, based off of a model which takes into account dwelling, square footage, pavement within site, square footage, concrete patios, etc., which we can all do through GIS layer. And then whatever the whatever the fee structure is would be based off of the square footage process, and then it would be tiered, very similar to water, very similar to our water and sewer rates, where we're advantageously reducing the cost burden on those that take, the approach to reduce or mitigate their effects on our stormwater system versus those who choose to build 7 basketball courts on their property.
I will just add that there are, so a lot of municipalities do use impervious cover as a way to determine the fee, and that is viewed as the most equitable, because it's like exactly how much stormwater you're generating, based on the impervious cover. But there are, if we feel that using a GIS layer that constantly needs to be updated is gonna have too large an administrative burden, there are other ways. A lot of, especially like a lot of municipalities have a, tiered system based on zoning, so they'll just have a blanket residential rate, and then maybe a couple different rates for commercial, industrial kind of, parcels. So there's a lot of ways to do it, and that would all be part of that, evaluating the fee structure. And there's like the most equitable is literally take every single parcel and say, how much impervious cover do you have, and relate that to a fee. Or there's these things called equivalent residential units, where you take the average impervious cover for different tiers and kind of use that. So there's a whole spectrum, but that's all part of the there.
And that relates back to the admin, clerk, supervisor, depending on which election or method we move forward with, determines how much work someone may have to put in at that level of speciality. But just like anything else, we work with the assessor, the building commissioner, so as things change and as the assessors go up and reassess, we see driveway permits. Using Concord, we see driveway permits, so as they increase, that would be funneled back to the clerk and admin, and rates would be adjusted or equivalent. The same when the assessors go out and there's an addition put on and they assess for taxation, that'd be fed back to our system again, increasing said rate. And just be aware, the majority of the costs would be incurred by large users such as the Noah facility, Maynard Crossing, Stratus, the old Stratus building, Beijing Royal. They actually significantly add to our infrastructure without any mechanism supported outside of their traditional property.
And one more point I can't resist, a lot of those large, like really highly impervious properties are tax exempt, but they wouldn't be exempt from fee. Not a.
Not as a business, it's a storefront, that might be adding to some of the problems that you showed, this, the gross yellow stuff coming out. I'm certain that must be coming from some business somewhere. But they may not have an impervious surface that would be reflected in.
It would be the owner of the building, so most of our small business owners don't also own.
I understand that, but most of them also don't have, a lot of impervious surface around.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised.
Also, with that gross grease slug, whatever that is, once we determine the source, whoever is responsible is going to have to mitigate that and pay for it.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're only contributing to solving the problem through their stormwater.
Yeah.
They would be.
That problem continues.
Yeah, that's still.
So it's not like something that's been in the pipes for 100 years and now it's just making its way through.
Maybe, but it's there. We basically identified the issue and just don't have enough. We had about $20,000, I think, of our MS4 budget this year, which is the largest task by far to do this catchment investigation work. And we're just out of funds and just sitting now until the next fiscal year when we can continue our investigation.
Yeah, we did dye testing of sanitary sewer in Euclid where there was an outfall and none of the sewers leaked. So again, we spent a significant amount of resources, but ran out of money.
But yeah.
We don't have CCTVs, which is camera systems. We don't have money to camera these pipes. Dye testing is very cheap, but even that takes a lot of coordination and staff resources. And we'll continue next year when we get our next fiscal year on identification of those sources.
Yeah, it feels really crummy to be sitting on these issues that are there, but it's just they're so slow. And you have to pick and choose which ones are the priorities.
You mentioned earlier talking about some other towns that have been fined for some of the problems. Is there any indication that Maynard is susceptible to fines in the near future?
I mean, I hope not, because, you know, I'm trying my best to make sure we're meeting the bare minimum MS4 permit requirements. But at the same time, I know, so in, permit year 7, which is not this upcoming June, but the following June, so basically less than a year and a half from now, all those problem catchment investigations, basically the ones where we know there's some kind of illicit discharge issue, those are all supposed to be resolved. So in less than a year and a half, and knowing the rate we're going at now and how many we have, there's just no way we're gonna be fine. And we've talked, just we know that, and so if EPA decides to, we're doing our best to document every action that we are taking and show progress and document all our progress. So that hopefully that covers us, but if EPA decided to really go after non-compliance, we couldn't stand, you know, say we're complying. So yeah, I hope not. You know, I hope that EPA would at least see that we're trying our best, but they are, like, there are a lot of every, I don't know, 6 months, I hear about another town that has consent decree. So it is a real threat.
Yeah, typically they go after large entities before they go. So what you're starting to see is them targeting for large entity users, and then it will eventually trickle down as the permit comes to a close. Part of our capital requests, a multi-million-dollar app, to resolve a lot of these. Again, they're weighted against many other multi-million-dollar apps for the town of Maynard. We're looking to try to provide you an option that can pay for a lot of this over time, as opposed to asking you to bond it just under general taxation. Please be reminded, an enterprise fund can issue bonds under its own process, or its water and sewer, and handle these localized as opposed to competition versus other high priorities in the town. But again, as we go through the feasibility study, we're hoping to give you a complete package. Of course, there's unknowns and we have to budget down, and you can kind of look at the priorities of the day, which we do now, even within our $140,000 budget. We'll continue to do that. We'll give you $140,000 plus worth of work. But this is kind of where we're at, and we're just consistently piecemealing things together for everybody.
Anything else? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For the update.
Thank you, guys.
Great work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
6163 Summer Street, right?
So, Mr. Chair, I wasn't clear whether I was going to have a report from the 6163 Summer Street Committee, and we do not. But I did see that the committee has submitted an agenda for a meeting, I think, later this week. And on that agenda, it does talk about developing a status report to provide to the board. So the only other topic I was bringing up to the board is relative to the cost of coverage, insurance coverage for that, and potential mitigating costs if there is a need to develop a building and whatnot. So it's a significant cost. It's no surprise. It's a massive property and a huge undertaking to coverage that. Our insurance provider had to go out to a third party insurance provider because our insurance provider does not cover leaking property, so they had to go to a third party and they had to renew those quotes because the quotes that they had expired. So I have nothing particular to note for the board this evening. I am just excited to hear what the Reese committee may have for the board.
We do expect them at a meeting sometime in the not too distant future.
Yes, I do. I will. I'm trying not to like over pressure them, but they know that I'm waiting for them to come to the board. They know that. So
I think the drift between kind of establishing the bleachers and when we got the report, to me indicates that we should see groups like these on a more frequent basis.
yeah, that's true. That's true. No, I'll send a friendly reminder. Thank you. We look forward to it.
Okay. The next up is, I guess, the election warrants.
Relatively straightforward housekeeping. board, but it's Super Tuesday coming up.
I'll move to approve the 2024 presidential primary election warrant with the indicated date, time, and location as Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for all 4 precincts at the Fowler Middle School, 3 Tiger Drive, Maynard, as presented, authorizing for digital signatures if approved.
Second.
Any conversation? All those in favor? Board policies.
Mr. Chair, so we're actually joined by, and I hope he's still on,
Yeah.
Attorney Tellerman.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Jay, for being very, very patient. I gave Jay a horrible estimation about what time he might come on, and I apologize. He's been around town for long enough to know we do the best we can. So Attorney Tellerman is with Town Council, MTC. And Town Council had advised the town, through my office and the select board, some updates to our flag raising policy. Coincidentally, we do have 2 pending applications for flag raising from 2 different groups that is unrelated. So it's kind of serendipitous that Town Council is providing its recommendations. I'll let Attorney Collins kind of explain better the difference, but really it's kind of a different approach to the town's consideration through the select board as to which applications you're taking, what kind of flag they want to apply, and whatnot. So it really is not specific to any sort of group or flag or whichever it is, just a different approach. But I'll let Attorney Tellerman do a better job explaining what I just said.
Right, so thank you. So about a year and a half ago or so, there was a US Supreme Court case involving the city of Boston, actually the Shurtleff case, that talked about flag policies. And it really changed the way towns, not just in Massachusetts, communities, states, counties, whatever, had to how to deal with flag raising, but it's a countrywide issue. And the issue at play in Boston, and I'll just give you the shorthand version of it, is that they had a policy, not altogether that different from your old policy or the policies of most communities, where if you were a group and you wanted to fly a flag on their flagpole, you could make a request and they would grant it or not grant it. So they granted a flag request to other groups, as was typical, and then they chose not to grant a flag flying request to another group. And that group sued. And they prevailed all the way up to the Supreme Court on First Amendment grounds. And what the court ruled was that by having a process whereby any interested member of the public or any group could make a request to fly a content-specific flag, if you say yes to them, you are essentially creating what we call a public forum, or the public square, so to speak, a full First Amendment free zone, whereby you cannot restrict speech, except for the usual exceptions, such as hate or threats or things like that. And it essentially means that towns have to really think about how they want to do this. And towns are certainly free to continue the practice of taking requests from any groups to fly flags, and you could grant those requests. But if you grant a request, you can't say no to someone else, essentially, no matter how repugnant their views are or how different their views are from the interests of your town or the interest of the select board or the school committee or what have you. So we quickly mobilized after that and started releasing changes to flag policies that would reflect the ability of a town to, or not reflect, but would allow towns to choose to fly whatever they wanted to fly on flagpoles, but to do so on their own, i.e. a select board that controls the flagpole could choose whatever they want. It could be a viewpoint specific flag, but it would be their viewpoint. It would be that government speech. It is not members of the public who choose to, or who get an opportunity to have a say in what flies on that flag. Now, certainly members of the public could lobby for a particular flag, but ultimately the policies that we've adopted or have recommended that our towns adopt is that we make a declaration that a flagpole is not a public forum and that any choice of what flag to fly on that flagpole would be the select board's and the select board's own choice, i.e. making it government speech, not public speech. So that is the process that we have recommended that towns follow. We have recommended a number of policies. Now, flash forward to a little while ago, we were informed that the policy in Maynard had not evolved to our current form, which is fine. Some towns have been slow to adopt, but there has been some interest by the public in petitioning for certain flags. And we felt it was a good idea to recommend to Greg and to the select board that you may wish to, if you so desire, to modernize your flag policy to something that distills it to just a select board choice and not to have an application process whereby any group or person of the public could make a recommendation or an application to fly their specific flag. So that's what we've put before you. That's what we recommend if in fact you want to have the say in exactly what's going to fly on your flagpoles. If you're comfortable with the status quo, then you can retain the status quo. There are some obvious, some unintended consequences with that, as I've described. So it can be a pretty nuanced issue. So I'm happy to take questions or walk you through what the way our policy works, which is pretty simple. It's a one-pager. So whatever the board would like to do, I'm happy to respond to questions or comments.
For context, we don't get a lot of flag applications anyways. Well, we looked at a lot.
We have 2 in the pipe.
We happen to do have one. You're right. Actually, you're right. Coincidence. That was very. I don't know. It's surprising that we actually do. But previously, it was 2021 last time, and it was for the Sutcliffe Centennial.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been 2 years.
And that was a Maynard flag, essentially.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I have a quick question, counsel. Does the Supreme Court decision go as far as to talk about other public displays, for example, a fence that maybe currently businesses put signs up on, that now somebody else says, hey, I want to put my sign up there. And because it's public fence, does the same decision apply to that?
Potentially, but there's also a difference between commercial speech and advertising of certain events, like certain, like Maynard, Maynard downtown business day or whatever. There's a difference between viewpoint type flags, but yes, potentially a fence could have the same essential treatment under this case law if you chose to let people apply for or make recommendations for a viewpoint specific banner on a fence, whether it be an American flag or a POW MIA flag or a Don't Tread on Me flag. Once you open it up for that kind of viewpoint type of display in the application process, then you are potentially opening it up for all. So the next person that recommends or applies for it could be something that is very much against the interests of the select board. But you're right, it's not just a flagpole, it's just flagpoles have become, for some reason, the focus of this particular decision.
Yeah.
and that is. and
The
a
reason
lot
I ask,
subsequent.
the reason I ask is we may want to notify our colleagues on the school committee who do approve posters or whatever on a public fence, that they may be treading on some dangerous water should somebody that come forward.
Right, so, and there can be a distinction too, because sometimes something that may be visible to the public doesn't necessarily make it a public forum. If it's in a restricted space, you know, we could analyze any particular set of facts, but yes, an outward facing fence where people can walk by and do things. Again, the fact that there may be messages that the public is craving or interested in isn't necessarily the issue. It's who's calling the shots as to what goes on in that fence and how the request for that fence. So if, for example, the school said, we are going to display on a fence the artwork of the students, that's our choice. The fact that the students are creating that artwork is a different story. They're not applying for that action. So you can see where there's a bit of gray area in how the requests come to the particular entity that controls the particular flagpole, fence, brick wall, whatever it may be. So it's who's controlling it and the access to it, the availability of access to that particular medium that we get focused on.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Would anybody like to have a further discussion or maybe move the motion?
Yeah, I think this whole thing makes sense. Certainly back when we were talking about the whole flag policy that we have now, I was concerned about it at the time because of the at the time there had been, and I forget what organization was out there looking to fly flags, but it can get messy. And here we are in a situation where that indeed can be the case. And, you know, if I had my druthers, I guess I would say only the American flag, the state flag, and the POW flag are flying from my pole. And that's it, you know. But anyway.
All right.
There's a question online. I don't even wanna.
Okay, hello?
Yeah, hi, it's Lisa Dunn. I think you might know why I waited for this topic. Because I
Oh, 'cause you wanna use the
asked for a
flag.
pride flag, and I'm getting
Give
the
that-
influence that your preference is to turn us down based on this conversation.
No, the preference is to protect the town from some organization that we might find repugnant.
But I just want to clarify, the board is not considering any applications at this time. I mentioned that we had 2 in our queue, but I have not submitted any application to the board to consider a flag. So I'm just, from my perspective.
No, I wasn't taking it as if we were approving anything, but I assumed from the comment that they were planning on making a request.
I did make a request. He may not have submitted it yet, but I submitted it to him.
Yeah, to my office, that's right, but I wanted the board to have the time to consider a policy. It's the standard practice. There's been times when the board hasn't had a policy, in this case we do, and it's a recommendation from council to update.
So are we saying that there will be a separate submission and a separate vote on this particular ask, or that we may never see that submitted at all?
If I don't know if you're asking me, but I'll talk. So if the board were to approve this proposed draft policy as recommended by town council and my office, that would do away with the public application process, which I know I'm kind of paraphrasing what Attorney Collins said, but there would not be a separate application process as there currently is right now. It would come at the complete direction of the board as to what they determine would be appropriate. There would be no application process.
So then, basically, as you're saying, the application that I've already made would then not be submitted if they decided to vote that there was a standard. And this was the standard.
believe that is correct.
Right, but as I understand the policy, if the board had a discussion and chose to fly a particular flag that reflected the interest of the board, then that would fit under the policy, is that correct?
That's right.
It reflected
That's right. And if I may, it doesn't prevent, the policy doesn't prevent people lobbying for the flying or any particular form of expression. The select board can receive comments from whoever they want. Anyone's free to submit a letter or make a recommendation as to a flight. The policy is really for the protection of the board from having to fly a flag that might run counter to the town's interests or as understood and established by policies of the select board itself.
I will say, I do agree with David, you know, after seeing this and after really kind of, you know, going back to the original policy that we did in 2021, you know, it really made me think more about what the flagpole is for, and it is for, you know, in my opinion, is for, you know, and as much as I appreciate POW/MIA, I actually would go one step further and just say it's the American flag, the state flag, and the town of Maynard, if we have a flag. But I don't necessarily think that flagpoles themselves need to be used as a form of expression other than what they were originally intended for. And that's my personal opinion. I think there are plenty of other ways to get word out, you know, that's not on a town government
But
piece of property.
that's a decision up to this.
That's
board.
up to our board. Yeah, I was just saying that I was agreeing with David, that's all.
Okay. Thank you.
So I mean, we can still. This or future iterations of the board can decide to fly whatever flag we choose to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we vote.
This
Yeah.
policy is designed to prevent us from being compelled to fly a flag.
Correct.
by members of the public.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion?
I will move to approve the updated flag raising policy as presented.
Second.
Any additional conversation? All in favor? Thank you, Jay. Attorney
Thank you,
Kellerman.
Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting and being patient with us as well.
No worries. As Greg said, I'm pretty used to this kind of thing at this
Yeah.
point, so no problem.
Blame me.
No worries.
All right.
Have a good
Thank you
night.
very much. Thank you. Greg's budget, I think.
Not much to include. I went to the finance committee meeting last week. It was good. They asked great questions, very insightful. Trying to help them sort of like get an understanding of where we are and where we plan on going. And it was good. They had some questions about a number of things. The governor's proposed budget, and then but also they had some questions regarding the asset litigation for schools assessment. I can't really speak to that too much beyond like what I was provided as to the school boards submitted assessment to the town. So that which you probably saw in my budget recommendation. What I concluded for the board is just a budget presentation that I got from that a bit, but my recommendation is if the board has questions, you can either consider inviting the superintendent's office or even your own Maynard resident who's on the school board for the estimate application will ask that them. Or else potentially have a joint meeting, but the finance committee is inviting, which is traditional that they do, they invite the superintendent's office at those meetings to kind of clarify their assessment. So that's all I have for you this evening. Stephanie and I did meet with attorney assistant town administrator Stephanie Duggan. He and I did meet with our Maya rep, our Maya health rep today. Just get a little bit of better understanding about their proposal. It was useful, but I think Stephanie and I are really looking forward to speaking with our consultant that will give a little bit more clarity as to how much we should budget in confidence. And that's planned in the near future. So budget's always always developing, always, you know, I got a little bit more insight tonight about some things, oh,
Okay.
I did a little math on the FY 25 total assessment due.
Yeah.
And if you divide that out by the amount of students, it's actually under the per pupil cost that Maynard is.
oh,
So it's only about 20,000, and I know last year was, I think, 22 or 23,000 for Maynard,
somebody
so,
in middle school? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
so it's actually, so I guess. Maybe it's on track, that's the only way I can gauge it,
I don't know,
but.
I noticed that the enrollment went down by 3.
Yeah,
Are you suggesting we send all our kids to,
it's not what I'm saying,
Save
I'm
money.
just saying it's on track when, it's kind of like, honestly, all of it, the charter school gets our per pupil cost as well. It doesn't, but it costs us, just because they're going there, it's gonna cost. But it doesn't seem like it's outrageous, is what I was trying.
Very good. That's good feedback.
okay,
That's it, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
okay, the annual town meeting. So,
No, go ahead.
do you want to talk about the first one, though?
Yeah, sure.
So after we left the joint budget meeting, I happened to be in a parking lot, and bumped into town moderator. So he and I had a nice conversation about a whole bunch of different things, but one of the town topic was, I mentioned that, there was some conversation at our meeting that morning about the potential of having somebody read a report or, say something prior to, and I said, well, that's the moderator's call. And he said that was something he was attempting to do at a prior town meeting, but didn't get done, and he was talking about having somebody read a state of the town report prior to the town meeting. And he said, give it a half hour, so maybe have someone, schedule it, put it out on all the advertisements and everything at 6:30 and start it before he comes in at 7 and starts the town meeting. So he's very open to the idea, but he just thought, as I thought, he would not want part of his meeting. He said he'd be happy to have us do it beforehand and use that as a time to, both bring some people up to speed on what else is out there that's not particularly gonna be discussed or dealt with during the town meeting, and to potentially lobby for some of the things that we lobby for at every town meeting, which is volunteers, people to get involved in some of the things that go into running the town, and some of the committees and boards that we have openings on. So he's very open to the idea of basically anything that's makes sense along the lines of a town report and working to get some of those empty seats filled.
Would we be able to do something, I know this is probably a huge ask, but to also put it in the warrant? I know like the town of Stowe has in the beginning of their warrant is, or has been, I actually haven't checked it recently, but has been kind of like that type of thing. It's actually a report from the finance committee. And it talks about basically the state of the town. And,
You probably could.
Like a
so-
preamble.
yeah, so it just kind
Yeah.
of gives like an overview, so you kind of have a background when you're reading the warrant. That,
Yeah.
okay, this is kind of where we're at, and this is what we're asking for.
No, I'm sure you probably could, because that's not the legal portion. That's not the questions itself. That's just,
It used to traditionally be part of the town report that nobody now gets anymore. The regular book that we produce, there would be a summary of the state of the town per se, as part of the town report.
when I was applying for the position here 6 years ago, if I recall, because I went to the town meeting and there was a report given a half an hour before, and I believe it was by both the interim town administrator and the superintendent. But again, it was like, unless you showed up a half an hour, like you were gonna miss it, right? So you had to and town meeting people kind of roll in that stuff. So and we haven't done it since. I think if I became to present whatever, but I think I would just need to have guidance as to what people want to hear. But I really don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
with so much information out there that y'all are privy to, you are who you are, but what are people interested in? I'm not sure. So I think I would like some guidance as to how to somehow squeeze in, almost 11,000 population town, and what we did over last year in 10 minutes. For people to understand, it's tall order, but we could, I think it's just a matter of time.
I mean, I think the initial discussion about it was more of a, kind of a look beyond town meeting into the future as to what projects and what things are out there.
Okay,
And when we were talking about those things that day, it was the potential of a senior center, the potential for some
DPW barn.
DPW repairs,
okay.
and there was a third, bleachers. So three things that were out in the towns, out on the horizon, but that we should all be aware of and consider. And then there's probably, any number of other things that might fall into that type of thing, but not quite as large in the dollar and cents things.
Still moving.
Yeah,
No, I
Yeah.
Stormwater and.
I mean, stormwater, water in general,
Appreciate that.
I mean, quick update maybe on a well, and then the conversation, a quicker version of the conversation about the potential for a pairing with MWRA or something,
Yeah.
those type of things. That's it.
But
That's
again,
all.
each one of the topics is obviously volume, so like, it would be like, hey, by the way, we need to fix that, but
That's
that's.
all we talked about. Then he told me all about his skiing exploits, so. He's skiing this,
That's needed to be included.
he's just skiing. We won't talk about that.
Would you, at this time, I know this is early on, and I won't belabor this point any further, but do you want me to reach out to the superintendent's office as well? Or would you like this to be just from my office, or don't answer me tonight, come back to me next time?
Well, to discuss what?
Like I said.
As I described it, my recommendation.
Of them to have their own conversation? I mean, if. We only have a half hour,
Right.
so I think we have to consider that, I'm not, I'm not even picking on them, I'm just saying. I think in Dick's world, that these things need to be,
Okay,
that type of brief and whatever, but I don't have a problem, and certainly. One person could do the whole thing and include, is there anything you would like us to include in this conversation prior to town meeting? And they could provide us with, what they might want us to say.
I think I understand. Okay, very good. Mr. Chair, the other topic, in consideration of annual town meeting was, at the end of the joint budget review, it was mentioned that there could be, a potential for another joint meeting of some sort, between some of the major players, finance committee, select board, school committee, capital planning committee. So, I took that as a little bit of direction, and I looked ahead at the dates, and I saw that March 26th was the date before the select board is expected to approve the election warrant. So, I'm proposing it now. How does the board feel about a March 26th joint meeting? If you would like to consider, continue some of the conversation that you had, 2 Saturdays ago. That's a Tuesday night. I just chose a Tuesday night, that's all. Very good meeting.
I don't have any objection to it, but I kind of feel like. We're considering the budget that the school presented and the way they presented to take care of it is, it seems as though we look pretty good right now, like in terms of that.
Sure.
In terms of needing a larger meeting, I think there was still some monies that you were, trying to balance and that type of stuff, right? But
I have my.
yeah, you get your issues to deal with, but I don't mind meeting with everybody, but it just seemed like, they made took the steps that they took to reach the level that they wanted to reach,
Separately, there is budget subcommittee.
Yeah. That's,
Next week, right,
I'm okay with it if everybody else is like, I guess the budget subcommittee could tell us if they believe that that's a meeting we have to have.
Oh,
Yeah.
We could certainly tentatively say yes, but if the budget subcommittee believes, if they take a look at what's going on and what the school presented and the solution that they came up with to their own problem, of the gap between your offering and their ask.
Yeah.
Do we need to have that, long of a meeting?
I think the question I would have is what would we want to accomplish
If it were just
on
me,
the March
as,
26th meeting?
well, as me as an individual, it doesn't need to happen for a town meeting, because I'm agreeing with Chris, I think we have a path for a town meeting, but the kind of big question on my mind is, how do we handle all these capital topics that are coming up, both staging of those major capital things and, also that, you know, backlog of capital items, some of which Justin presented in the stormwater or through VHB and the stormwater conversation, et cetera. So, you know, having a focused discussion on capital planning with the capital planning committee, obviously, at the point, if not before town meeting, but maybe in that phase before everybody goes home, summer sort of timing, but just to, again, and that's sort of thing that turns into the next year's annual town meeting presentations on here is where we are, and well, you know, Green Meadow got pulled up because of that SBA, and so now we got to reassess how we do the next, you know, what's the next 5 to 10 year outlook in terms of those, you know, big ticket items that are next on the list.
Well, I would certainly, you know, be willing to say to Natasha or whoever else is gonna make a presentation, if they have anything that they'd like to come to our next, you know, our next meeting, I mean, and something to discuss, you know, that's fine. Doesn't require the whole world, that, you know, just, you know, they can either come as a board or they can come as a, you know, a representative of their board, however they wanna, you know, any comments or questions that they have for us or whatever.
Okay.
Or for part of that process.
Okay. No problem. The other note that just for the public's awareness, so if there's not on the election warrant, at the beginning of May, to seek authority for an override through a debt, what's called a debt exclusion, but it's a type of override to fund the bleachers. If we don't do that in this spring, the town clerk's office did check with the state's election office to find out if we could put it on the, you know, presumed fall election, which there's a presidential election, and the state is sometimes reluctant to allow towns to add questions to their ballot, but they agree in this case. So,
Okay.
just as far as the planning of all that, if you could put on the presidential ballot in November, if it's not on the day.
Okay.
So now if what is the timing for, needing to do that? So actually, I guess I have two questions. So, obviously the presidential election, there's a mail-in, that everything's has a mail-in component to it.
Yeah.
So like, what is the timing of having to, when do you have to get that decision done by? To decide that we're gonna put
The
it on.
state said, in the email that Greg sent out to us earlier
Yeah.
this week, the state said there was a deadline date. I believe it was in like August or September.
Yeah,
So, and then the other question is, what happens if it doesn't, if for some reason it doesn't pass the town meeting? And we've already put it on the ballot, does that matter? Or it just means like people can vote all they want, it doesn't matter, because it won't.
It wouldn't
it
matter.
matters because you do need both actions.
Well, right, but if it didn't pass a town meeting, it doesn't matter that it is on the ballot afterwards.
That's correct.
That's
That's-
not right.
Okay, all right,
Right.
I just wanna make sure we didn't like. Oh,
Yeah, okay. That's what I had as far as for annual town meeting.
Okay. All right, the Green Meadow School Building Committee project. There was supposed to be a meeting tonight at 5, but they discovered at about 3 that it had not been posted, so it's gonna be put off for a week.
it wasn't happens.
Oh my God. Since I did it myself 2 weeks ago, I really feel bad for the guy. But anyways, what happened was everything was in time and they had it into where the usual time frame. The school had a snow day and it got piled up in a bunch of stuff that came as a result of the snow day and it
Yeah,
got neglected. So anyways, so that meeting was put off. The senior center committee did have a meeting last Thursday evening, and coming out of that meeting, there was a lot of conversation about but one of the things that happened is they have quite a library of documents from all 3 groups. And they had the committee created a working group that's gonna go through those documents and kind of call out duplications and other things, and you know, they're gonna take out some of the stuff they had in there, which in the early 70s, old stuff that some people had lying around that they had put in. So they're gonna clean that all up, get out what they don't need to have in there, and then come back with a kind of a spreadsheeted list. And I actually, there's a list on a spreadsheet, but I didn't see a place to go look at it yet. They kind of didn't put that out there. They do have a spot They're prepared to put it in there. They just want to clean the list up before they start actually adding the information. So that was a good thing. That'll happen and I think it was kind of, it's an aggressive timeline. They want to start to get it done. So they didn't give themselves a lot of time. So they're probably home doing it right now. But and then there were two other questions. One was brought up, they were all brought up at the town meeting, our budget meeting. The idea of just putting a blank account somewhere and that was going to get checked on to see if that was okay with town accountants and if it's okay with the DOR or whoever, just a blank account sitting out there because both they wanted one and also the long range planning committee wanted one. They had talked about when their chair asked about it first. Capital plan, yeah, capital,
Oh, okay.
yeah, capital.
We do that, I maybe said this at that meeting, but, we do that in some cases, like you'll see in ClearGov, we do that, we'll just add lines for some departments, and we're always asking for stuff, so, but the accounting version is a little different, because it's creating an account, and then, sort of like an unfunded account is kind of an additional burden first.
But, one of the conversations was, does that committee need any money? Do they need any money to go about their business? And I think, I don't know if you need any money, but there is a potential that there's money that, there's, so at some point there was potential $70,000 in the picture to pay for the study. Kate's got cut in half, so she had 17.5 to go towards the study, then there was another 17.5, which kind of leaves a third 17.5 sitting out there.
Oh,
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
So I suggested maybe that would be a number that if we were gonna go that route at some point, that would be a number that could populate that account. If it was decided that would be an account that people wanted to create.
I'd be curious what the money would be used for,
Yeah.
because my understanding is that money could also be used just for, improvements of the senior center.
Right, which is fine. And so the conversation went a little further and, a couple of people said, well, why wouldn't we get a bigger number like whatever to pay for a lease? And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself as it's being said, well, because the town doesn't have the kind of money. So anyway, I said I would get back to them at some point before the next meeting, which is a week from this meeting, a week from this Thursday. And just get back and say, say whether or not yourself and Kevin were amenable to the idea of just putting a blank account. The monies, certainly everyone understands that the monies are the monies. And if they're not there, they're not there. The other thing is, it just came up in this meeting, discussing about the warrant and the lack of the town report getting out. Because, we don't have the same kind of resource we used to have in the Beacon Villager and other things. And during that conversation for the senior center, there was the conversation from Amy about, does everybody get her monthly, her monthly report? And I don't think a lot of people do. And one of the comments was, well, that's because Action Unlimited is pretty limited, which is a fair statement to make. I'm just kind of wondering, as we start to talk about warrants, town reports, those type of reports getting out, what other ways, where can we go for other potential ways to get some of that information out? Other than expecting everybody to find their way to the town website and print it.
No, I mean, that's, the town website is like the central depository, but, or repository. But I would say, Action Unlimited has an advantage because they already have the infrastructure set up to distribute. You don't have to go through Action Unlimited. A couple of years ago, I called around different vendors to see if they could do it, but, that comes at a cost either way. Now, so you pay the vendor or the vendor, either they themselves take on the mailing costs, which is like I can't remember what it's called, but if you have a registration fee basically at the post office, so that either the town have to bear that or the vendor. What the relationship we have with Action Unlimited is, they already have the relationship with the post office and they distribute it to all the postal addresses that are registered as residents in town. So it's probably an imperfect system no matter what either way you spin it. But I'm relatively confident that when it comes to the senior center newsletter, but as well as our forms, we go through Action Unlimited, they're submitting it to the post office, it's getting distributed accordingly. Like, I'm not aware of them deliberately or otherwise not, when we found out even that there was a particular neighborhood that was getting cut off, we paid them extra to make sure that it was.
We do that for the
Okay.
warrant, but not for the.
The regular district.
Yeah, for the monthly
monthly
senior report.
senior.
That's fair, that's fair,
But I don't think there's anything we can do about that.
right, it's based on their business model, so
Yeah.
we pay them extra,
Okay,
which is a possibility, yes.
it just came up in two conversations in a few days, so.
Maybe I can talk about it.
All right. That was really it that took place at that meeting. The next meeting, I believe, was February, March 7th. Yeah. Okay, I guess that's it for the senior center, so now we're on to correspondences. Someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to accept and approve correspondences A through G as shown.
Second,
Does anybody have any questions about any of the correspondences A through G? All right, all those in favor of accepting them? And then we have, two sets of minutes. We can accept.
I'll move to accept and approve the meeting minutes of January 30th and February 6th, 2024 as shown, authorize use of digital signatures if approved.
Second.
Further conversation on those two sets of minutes? All those in favor? All right. Now brings us to the town minute.
I'll go quick. No particular order. I am now on the Lowell Regional Transit Authority's Audit and Finance Subcommittee, where I was invited to review the audit, which is on order and will be sent to the full board soon, but I'm excited that they considered me to be on their audit and finance. The Maine Police Department celebrated its 100th anniversary on February 13th. When in 1924, the select board made a separate police department, which is fascinating. And then I was proud of the clerk's office. They went over to the Gardens on February 6th and they hosted like a voter information registration test. That's great. And then Super Tuesday is coming up March 5th. So to remind the board, that's Tuesday. So the select board meeting will be March 6th. And I hope everyone votes. And then go, and I encourage the public to go to the town's website, look at the clerk's office, and they put all the information about how to vote, where to vote, early voting, all that, it's all. And then, I'm very proud of Assistant Town Administrator Duggan for securing the staff wellness library grant. Well, grant to fund the staff wellness library, which is great. We apply for the wellness grant through Maya every year. That's what we're doing. And then the Economic Development Committee is hosting a business awards event on March 10th, which I was invited to go to. Perhaps the board had been invited as well.
Yeah, and did everybody get back to Armin? He was
Yeah,
quite concerned we hadn't all got back to him immediately.
I am unable to answer, but I did tell him.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah,
I'm
and
glad.
he singled you out as being the only guy that responded to him. In his timeframe, by
What was
the
the
way.
issue?
He had sent out an email to the five of us, requesting that we, attend an awards presentation, which is Sunday, March 10th. I believe at
I'm kind of one.
from 10 to 1 at the sanctuary, where he's gonna honor 5 different companies.
Yeah.
For 5 different
I
things,
did
and
not
his,
see that.
he envisioned that each of us might present a citation to each of the 5 businesses. Again,
I did not see it.
so, you know,
I'll
it's Sunday's a day of rest, it's not town government day. so that-
That may have been the one that he wrote to me saying he wasn't getting my email. My emails were bouncing back.
Oh,
are you still getting emails then? I don't know.
He doesn't know, no.
No. Okay, 2 more quick things. I was proud to see our public health nurse, Maura Carter, was over at the Council on Aging, the senior center, doing a blood pressure clinic. I thought that was great. And then I was also fascinated to see the aspects vocational high school students went to the senior center as well to help tech questions. I thought that was very cool. And I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair, unless anyone has questions.
no, you just wanna talk about the Woosok quick?
Oh, yeah. I even put it on the agenda, so,
See it there?
I think it's pretty cool, the town had been invited, to a Woosocks game, I'm trying to bring it up in the email.
May 22nd.
Yeah, May 22nd, but I also want to point out Sean Laughlin, who's sort of taking on a lot of this work on behalf of town, which I appreciate him doing that. So May 22nd is the date where hopefully everybody in Maynard goes down to the Woodstock game. And there's a couple other towns involved.
No borough.
Does anyone, oh, and then the question I had, determine if a board member is interested in representing the Maynard and throwing the first pitch. So, now the chair will still be the chair at that time, so I don't know if the board
Sure, there's
will
no
defer to.
We'll see how that goes.
Can we purchase like a block of tickets?
I don't,
There is
I was planning on going to the game, but, you know, it would be nice if we could get a block of tickets somehow for.
Yeah.
Either, not only us, for those of us who want to go, but the other members of town hall, maybe.
yeah,
So part of the deal is that you buy the tickets and there's a monetary, gain for the town to buy the tickets, and then they also, I do believe, part of their thing is they give a set of tickets, some number of tickets, like the Boys and Girls Club and other groups, but yeah, you can, that's absolutely the whole idea behind the thing. Is, the town would buy a bunch of tickets and be in the same spot or something like that.
Oh, well, and how, wait, is the town suing?
Yeah,
I think it's organizations in the town, so like.
The Stormwater Enterprise Fund.
No.
Right,
so
I think it's like the food pantry
I
or
got it,
something
I
like that,
got
like.
So-
some kind of nonprofit.
Specifically for the Boys and Girls Club?
no,
Anyway,
it's being done through the Boys and Girls Club. It's not specifically done for the Boys and Girls Club, although they will probably benefit stuff from it some. But like if the schools had an event or the town had an event and you wanted, whatever the guy's name is, it's not Wally, whatever their guy is,
Yeah,
he'll come here in full
regalia,
regalia, do the whole thing for like a parade or,
Smiley. I
you know,
think his
everything,
name
yeah,
is.
whatever, yeah, I can't remember his name because I sat through the meeting, I can't remember.
So, could we invite that guy to the mascot to the Little League parade
Yeah, he will
to
come.
promote this?
Yes, he'll come for that. He'll absolutely come for that. But so we just have to get in touch
I have no
with.
idea.
Maybe we could invite him to town
We just
meeting.
have to get, but anyways, any of those type of things, it's like a community outreach program and they come with the truck, they come with the guy and the whole 9 yards and, they basically are willing to do anything for the towns that are involved to try and get the ticket sales up. But I do believe there is a little bit of a,
it says that ticket proceeds will benefit the Boys and Girls Club.
yeah,
So
so
it
it's,
might be
yeah.
like, when you get the tickets, like kind
Yeah.
of mentioned that you want, you're part of Maynard. I don't know,
Yeah,
but Sean
okay.
said he was gonna get back to me soon, but
Okay.
the only question he had was, at this time, is there any interest in particular, about who might go up first?
Yeah, he already called me,
Oh,
called me.
if it's all
I
done,
was out at the
keep it
meeting,
working out.
I was at the other meeting, with that whole meeting. I
Yeah,
can't understand why I can't remember the guy's name, the mascot's name. It's drawn about that.
It's Smiley, isn't it?
he was good. So what's the name of that?
The Smiley Ball.
Yes.
Smiley Ball.
Smiley Ball. It's an mascot of
Worcester.
Worcester.
Yeah, they had a name, they had a different name for him, yeah,
So what I'm hearing, Mr. Chair, is you're on the mound,
okay.
and I'm not hearing any objections.
Definitely be on the mound. I will definitely be the audience.
Left-handed.
I grew up in
Left-handed.
Berlin, so it's like totally like,
You'll be all your friends,
I know,
all right, I don't know,
I will cheer
that's
you
all I
on.
have, but no, I don't have anything for chair reports. So. Anybody for the board member reports, Jeff,
nothing for me this week.
Christine?
I just had a quick question about ClearGov. Because we are on set tonight, and it's funny, apparently, when you go to cleargov.com. You end up at this weird, like. Landing page that's not the standard landing page, but if you go through the Maynard Financial Transparency portal. You actually do get to what I'm used to seeing, but I'm not quite sure if something changed.
When I typed in cleargov.com, we look at this after, but like.
Yeah. You go.
I'm just curious what you see.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'll show you because I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong, but I want to make sure, because we do refer people.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, David,
Oh, no, I don't have anything.
Mike,
No, nothing.
all right, would anyone like to make? a
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. All in favor?